here, we can, Okay, I would like to call to order our city council meeting for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. And I would like to ask the mayor to lead us in an invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Please stand. Lord, thank you once again for the wonderful community that we live in. I ask for special prayers and healing for our country. We've gone through some big issues here in the last few weeks that don't set what we really are. We ask that you watch over all of our people in the service that have gotten us this country to where it is today, and all of those that have paid the price for it. We remember coming up this weekend also September 11th, where we lost a lot of our citizens in an unnecessary attack. We ask that you watch over the people in Sebring, and we watch you over the council, and we do all we do in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Shute.
Here.
Bishop.
Here.
Carlisle.
Here.
Detman.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Lawrence.
Here. Okay, first of all, I'd like to welcome Mr. Bishop to our council. This will be his first official council meeting. And so, welcome, and
Thank you.
we got a nice, big, long one for you
I've
tonight.
only read it twice. So.
Okay, well, very good. Business from the audience. If you have any business and you're not on the agenda and you would like to get on the agenda at the appropriate place, if you'll see Miss Kathy Haley, she'll give you a form to fill out, and then we'll listen to you at the appropriate time. Mayor's report.
Not much tonight. Actually, just remember September 11th. The people that passed and the people that are involved in that, and the first responders that reacted, and everybody else. That we keep everybody in your prayers, and hopefully we have nothing else like that in the future. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Oh,
Council
I do
members?
have something
Yeah.
else. I'm sorry.
Yes.
We have the youngest member on here and almost the oldest member coming up.
Almost, yeah.
Close, if Chief Detman's not here, then Charlie's the oldest, but Charlie turned, oh, wait a minute, Lenard's old. I'm
Yeah,
It's
sorry.
all about
wait a
heart. It's all
second.
about the heart.
You're the third youngest, so.
There you go.
Charlie's
Right
got
in
a
the middle.
70th birthday coming up at the end of the week, right?
You singing happy birthday or what?
So should we sing, or?
Please, no.
Maybe just.
Please don't sing.
Well, thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Thank you. All right, council members'
Welcome to the
concerns.
club, sir. Just to piggyback, if you will, on the mayor's comments, right now, at our point in history in our country, we just need more prayers, folks. Think about that. If that's in your heart and if that's something you feel comfortable with, we just need to offer a lot of prayers up. Thank you.
Mr. Bishop, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Carlisle? No, sir. Mr. Stewart?
No report.
Okay. And I again want to reiterate about the 9/11 coming up. That'll be Saturday. In particular, the firefighters that went into the building that were not in the buildings, 343 of them lost their lives in the Twin Towers on 9/11. None of them were in the buildings to start with, but they went in to try to rescue and save other people, as well as some police officers and others as well that tried to do everything they could to rescue the people that were in those buildings. So please, let's remember this will be the 20th anniversary of that. And I don't know if any of you have ever been up to New York and seen the memorials up there, but they're pretty gut-wrenching. If you ever get up there, take a look. So, all right. So we'll keep their families, and some of the people are still suffering from it today that responded, that are still having health issues today. So we owe them a lot of gratitude. Okay. Liaison assignments. Mr. Ivy has left our service, and Mr. Bishop has replaced him, so there's a couple of liaison assignments that I have modified and changed from Mr. Ivy to Mr. Bishop. And that is in front of you. One of them will be the golf course, and you will be the liaison there. And then also the, I think the county commission and a couple others. So I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion, we accept the liaison assignments for Mr. Bishop.
He doesn't hear me.
I'll second that.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Any comments from council members? Is that okay with you, Mr. Bishop?
I think it'll be just fine.
Okay, that's very good. All right, Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Wait till you get to the community
Okay,
traffic
we-
safety team. Transportation.
Yeah, there
Oral
is one
meeting.
stinger in there.
Got a whole half a day there.
Sorry, I got.
We always give it to the new guy, though, so hey.
There you go.
Okay, we have a consent agenda. Items 8A through 8J are on the consent agenda for council action. I'd like to request a motion for the
I
consent.
make a
agenda.
motion, we accept the consent agenda. Maybe Dee would like to come up and talk to us. That's just the thing. I move that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Comments from council members? Okay, Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Okay, that's a big pile right there.
Yeah, we still got a bunch.
Okay. We have no old business. We'll go on to new business. That will be A, certificate to non-ad valorem assessment roll for fiscal year 21-22.
Good evening, Kim Shan, Administrative Coordinator, Utility Department. At your budget meeting on August 17th, you elected to increase the non-ad valorem from 165 to 190 per unit. That's gonna increase the revenue of 147,000. So we just need you to approve that so we can get that to the county.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like.
It's
that.
unplugged.
No, it's not.
It's unplugged. It won't work.
It's not even plugged in.
If it don't,
Did y'all hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you.
I think he's got it plugged into that thing.
Technical difficulties. Don't change your channel yet, folks. That's the one.
Hello, hello?
May I have to
Hear me
turn it
now?
up?
She's gonna go ahead and turn it up a little bit for you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me back there?
Yep.
Would you like me to repeat it?
Please.
Yes, please. yeah.
Okay. Kim Shands, Administrative Coordinator for Utilities Department. At your budget meeting on August 17th, you choose to increase the non-ad valorem from 165 to 190 per unit. That's going to increase the revenue about $147,000. So I just need you to approve that so we can get that to the county.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Comments or questions from council? Okay, request a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the certificate to non-ad valorem assessment roll as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions from council? Again, from the public? Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Okay, 10B, request to lease 759 Lemon Avenue for community garden, Miss Angela Williams. You come up.
Wiggins.
It's okay.
Wiggins, I'm sorry.
I was gonna correct it when I made it.
My mistake, I'm sorry.
Good
Before you get
evening.
started, let me just let council know this, because this is city-owned property that lies within the CRA boundaries. In any disposition, lease, or sale, even if it's for $1, you're required to go through the RFP process that we've now undertaken several times. So I apologize for it. It has nothing to do with this property, the dollar, or who's asking, or for what purpose they intend to use it. Just so you all know that that will be a requirement if you're inclined to lease it.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Wiggins, please present your request, and we'll take that into consideration, and then unfortunately, we'll have to go through that RFP process.
Not a problem. Completely understood. Good evening. I'm Angel Wiggins. I'm the president of the NAACP as well as the CEO of Washington Heights Community Network. And I have my vice here with me, and I want to say to the mayor and to the council that we are interested in the property at 759 Lemon Avenue. We would like to lease that property because our vision and our mission is to reclaim that community and beautify that community, and we would like to do that with utilizing that property as a community garden. We have several grants and other organizations that we're planning to work with who are offering to donate multiple items so that we could reclaim that property and start growing some beautiful things there and have a little bit of a seating area and nurture our community for our kids. So we're asking that Community Action Network, Washington Heights, be able to lease that property for $1 per year. And we now know we have to go through the RFP program, so we'll move forward with that. But we would like for you to take that into consideration as well.
Well, let me start this off and say that I'm glad that you guys are doing this.
Thank you.
I think anything that we can do to enhance the neighborhoods in our communities is great. I think getting people involved and actually doing a garden and growing something that maybe they can eat in the end, I think it's super. So this is the kind of stuff that we want to see happen.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate it,
for
and there's more to come. And we also appreciate everyone's support and all that we've been doing thus far, and we continue to move forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Council members?
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins.
Well, I'm in
Excuse
agreement
me.
as well.
I
love
was
the
gonna
idea.
ask you one question. Why don't you buy it?
Good question. I think because I don't think that the property was actually for sale. I think through a host of meetings with the council, CRA, city, county commissioners, as we discussed improving certain things, it was like, you've been talking about a community garden, have you ever thought about this property? So it was kind of brought to our attention. So I don't think that it was ever
We were looking at the
proposed.
model of the Boys and Girls Club, so how
Yes.
the Boys and Girls Club leases that building from the city. We just figured that model worked. We could continue with that. We could lease that lot from you all like the Boys and Girls Club.
But we're always up and open to suggestion because, our hope is to be able to revitalize that community and reclaim a few other things that are up there that have gone a little sour throughout the year. So, I harass Scott quite frequently, and he tells me what's what's new and what's for sale, and we do our very best to see what we can claim slowly
I
but surely.
suspect the consensus up here is a go, all the way. But you may want to talk to Scott about a possible purchase. But
Yeah,
as far as we're concerned, I don't think anybody's going to be anything but thrilled that you're doing this.
I think it's a great idea. I just wondered why you didn't want to own it.
We would love to own
It
it.
wasn't for sale. That's why.
But we will
Is it not for
follow
sale?
up with Scott if that's an option.
We can, we'll entertain that in the solicitation process.
Okay.
How's that?
That's great.
Sounds really
If you
good.
sell it, we could work on that.
Yep.
So.
Be
Okay.
$1.50.
Well,
So.
Listen, I like the way you negotiate. Thank you so much again.
Council members, Mr. Detman?
Nope, sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you all very much, and see Scott to get with the RFP.
So we don't need a motion.
No.
Nope.
Moving right along.
Okay, 10C. All right, Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Chapman, this is the conceptual approval for development of property located at the corner of Scenic Highway and Sebring Parkway. A little bit of background here. Is Mr. Jeff Kennedy and Mike Chapman will be at the meeting tonight to present Mr. Dutchman's Deutsch. His request. And this is an old agreement and the proposed parcel which permits 9 units per acre with a height maximum of 2 stories. They are requesting conceptual approval of a rezone from R3 to PD with a density increase to 18 units per acre and a height maximum of 3 stories. The PD zoning district is voluntary and allows flexible design, including the location of open spaces, building location and sizing, landscaping, and council can recommend changes to lessen the impact of an increase in both density and height. So if you would come up, is that Mr. Kennedy?
Chapman.
Mr. Chapman, okay. And tell us what you plan on doing over there and give us a briefing on it.
Okay, my name is Mike Chapman. I am the president of Chapman's Construction. I am here tonight to speak for the BSD Group, and I'd like to say thank you for taking the time, the council and the mayor, to let us present this. What we are doing, we are in the middle of our due diligence, and we are trying to look at the feasibility of this project to increase the density so it is feasible, financially feasible to move forwards with this. And what we're trying to do is develop a community apartment complex that would serve the influx we have of winter residents, nurses, retirees, doctors. We've spoke with the hospitals, and there is a need for this. So we're trying to do a community more so than just an apartment complex. We're proposing to put in a dog walk park, a pool, basketball court, tennis courts, fitness center, more of an entire community feel here instead of just straight apartments. We are doing a modern design. They are very attractive units, and we are asking the council if this is something that they would look favorably towards. I do know that Sebring is in need of housing, and I think this is a very viable project and attractive and would be a feather in Sebring's cap. It's a very nice development.
Councilmember, questions?
Well, this is all just preliminary. And
Correct.
If we give him the tentative
Go through zoning
approval, he's got to
anyway.
go through zoning.
Right.
And it'll be, the public will have an opportunity to voice their opinion as well. So I don't see a problem about approving it conceptually.
Like I said, Roland did too, sat on the EDC board and the IDA, and did a housing study probably 4 years ago now, and the need for rentals. And I think what's happened with the residential sales and that stuff, your $800-900 rentals are now $1,200 to $1,500 overnight.
Yeah.
And I think this is something I've dealt with the hospital, with the college, that there's a need for this kind of, and some of it's even short-term until people find a place to live. We really don't have an apartment complex in Highlands County. This is on a parkway, it's on a major thoroughfare, it's easy access to a lot of places, and I think this kinds of density is probably what it's gonna take to make that kind of a project feasible wherever you put the deal, so.
Correct.
It's a real need for our community.
I agree with that. I think there's a pretty severe shortage of rentals in this county, but I do have a relative who could possibly benefit financially from this, so I'm gonna abstain from any other comment.
Okay. Mr. Detman?
I can practically see this piece of property from my backyard, so it's gonna have to be nice.
If I'm involved in it, it'll be beautiful.
Pretty simple. Pretty simple. With Bernie Little Distributors being right there, I'm sure with the almost doubling the units in this PUD, it's going to cause a tremendous amount of traffic morning and especially afternoon, the 8, 9 o'clock and the 5, 6 o'clock. But I can't say I would be at all against it. I think Sebring is in dire need of additional housing, especially nice-looking housing and especially apartments. We have nothing like that here whatsoever, and I've always been amazed by that. So hopefully you can be the first one to make it look really nice.
Wonderful.
And I would like to encourage you to go forward with this also. I do have one kind of concern, and that is in that area in general, and not just your project. But as we grow Sebring, we're going to have a little bit more public infrastructure. And in particular, I'm going to say that would probably be an ideal area up in that general area, whether it's on your 15-acre parcel or somewhere else, that we might want to consider for a fire station. And so what I would ask you to possibly do in your plans is see if you have enough room, maybe an acre, that you could carve out for a little public infrastructure. Again, this is something that's just conceptual. It doesn't have to be in your area there, but in that general area, that's probably something we want to look for in the future. It might also enhance your complex there to have a fire station real close by.
Sure.
So that's just a suggestion for you.
Absolutely.
So,
That's out of my realm of
Yeah.
expertise.
any comments from the public in regards to this? Now's your first chance to make a comment here. This will go through a process, so there's lots of other chances. But again, you've got the gentleman here tonight to give him suggestions if you would like to see something change. No comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I do appreciate the time.
Do we need a motion on that?
No, sir.
No? Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll go and move on to 10D. Draft concepts for amendments to City of Sebring requirements for mobile homes and mobile home parks. Ms. Cotto Salisbury and she's
Actually, Jeff
That's not
Schmucker
her.
tonight, filling in for Jennifer. Scott, I sent a PowerPoint. Did you get that by any chance?
The PowerPoint?
Yeah. Okay.
You want that?
Can you repeat your name again, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff Schmucker with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. All right. I think you all have spoken on this topic a number of times. So we're back tonight. Have a little bit more discussion. What we want to do is get some final feedback from you all. We have not provided the actual draft language for you to review yet, but we wanted to kind of summarize it, have one more final discussion with you, hopefully, to get some final feedback to go back and bring the draft language back to you all, perhaps at the next meeting or coming meetings. So with that, I just want to do just a real brief overview, I guess, of where we've been and where we are. Next slide. My understanding is the discussion to this point has been concepts as to how to address mobile home parks, existing mobile home parks, but also looking at regulations for mobile home parks moving forward. The two concepts that were discussed were essentially how do we deal with non-conforming mobile home parks by use, which is essentially they're in a zoning that doesn't support that type of use. And then also non-conforming mobile home parks by design, meaning they may be in a zoning that permits them, but the design of it, for some reason or other, doesn't conform to the city's current codes. With the non-conforming by use, because it's not an allowed use in the zoning district, it essentially is not allowed to expand. It can't be improved. Generally, mobile homes can't be replaced on the site. With the by design, non-conforming by design, that's different. The zoning approves that, so there's opportunities there to potentially allow for some of those mobile home parks to improve that design, expand potentially in the future. So those were the two concepts that I understand that you all have discussed at this point in the direction. Next slide, if we will. Was to look at a number of different things, and that included preparing some concepts for the non-conforming mobile home parks by use, looking at some concepts for those non-conforming by design, but then also looking at the current code requirements in the city's code today, as well as looking at the different sizes of mobile home parks, single wides, double wides, and I guess they even make triple wides these days. Next slide. So just some considerations for you all tonight as we talk about this. One of the suggestions that we've provided to look forward and how to address potentially the non-conforming by use mobile home parks would be to assign a zoning of plan unit development. And a plan unit development is a flexible zoning district, and we can talk about that a little bit more, but that gives the city an opportunity to apply a zoning, condition the use on the site, condition the design of the site, again, flexibility with the current owner of the mobile home park to work with the city to help fix or remedy some of the issues that might be occurring in some of those mobile home parks that currently are non-conforming by use or they don't have the zoning today. One of the other considerations to think about then is the lot size requirements. Looking at a number of the mobile home parks today, and then also looking at the city's code, requires 40-foot wide lots and 4,000 square foot area. That's it. Again, looking at mobile home sizes, especially considering double wides, some of those 40-foot lots or 4,000 square foot area probably don't suffice to allow for those types of units to come on. Some of those, we have not done an inventory of what's actually out there. We assume that there's probably some double wides. I don't know if there's any triple wides. But that the current zoning code with just the 40-foot minimum and the 4,000 square foot area probably doesn't suffice for some of the mobile home units that may be coming in. And then finally, I understand there was some discussion about allowing RVs or potentially park models, which just for some definition to that is essentially something that comes in on wheels or on a chassis, but it finds itself to become somewhat of a permanent structure on the site. It gets skirted, it's connected to the foundation or the pad, but having some discussion of allowance for RVs or park models within the mobile home parks. Next slide, please. So again, I'm just giving kind of a summary here of what we were looking at, but so the draft concepts, essentially, and I think probably first and foremost, the city's code where it addresses mobile home parks right now, it's in multiple areas. So I think one of the suggestions up front would be, let's condense that down into one section so it doesn't get lost and it makes it a little bit more clear, both for the city as well as applicants or folks coming in to develop. Not allowing replacement of mobile homes in non-conforming mobile home parks. That's essentially current in your code today. So the question there tonight, some feedback that we'd want to get is that where we want to go moving forward? We could talk a little bit more about this PUD option for some of the ones that don't have the zoning today, if that's a direction we want to go. But how do we address the mobile home parks that are currently non-conforming by use, allowing the replacement of mobile homes in those parks? Next, requiring an inventory of or a survey of mobile home parks to determine what the existing conditions are. I think that's probably the most important to get the baseline of what's happening. Whatever direction that the city wants to go and how to address the issues that we have with the mobile home parks that are here today, finding out what that baseline is. What are the conditions in there? What are the widths of the pavements of the roadways? What are the lot sizes? How many units are actually in there? Creating that baseline, and again, that could essentially be part of a PUD process where you actually have a binding plan that gets adopted with the PUD zoning. That could create a baseline and then becomes a tool to have the city look at when folks do want to come in to replace units in the site or if they want to expand in the future. Next slide. Again, talking about lot sizes, consideration to change the lot sizes. I think it's pigeonholed right now to have 40-foot wide lots and 4,000 square feet, and that's it. I think there's a desire potentially to have double wides and maybe looking at some additional square footage in lot widths. Yes, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but to that point, though, this is a minimum square footage, right? And a minimum 40 foot. lot size, so if he had a double wide that wanted to go on a 60 or a triple wide on a 60, we still have the setbacks to protect from jamming him in on a 4,000, but that's the minimum, correct?
It would be the minimum, but if you had a park where they did want to facilitate double wides coming in, and you were to say, if we're going to facilitate double wides, we'd like to see 60-foot wide lots, for instance. I'm going to show a graphic in just a second of some standards that we found in terms of what are kind of general widths of mobile home parks, but it is a minimum. So if somebody wanted to come in and say, for a new mobile home park, we want to do all 60-foot wide lots, so then that would accommodate your single wides or double wides. It could do that. But if everything goes at 40 foot, and then you have folks that want to come in and do double wides, then we might have a got a design standard issue there potentially. So might want to look at something to provide for different characteristics, different standards for those different sizes. And then finally, the permissions for RVs in the mobile home park district. Next slide. So here's the graphic. So this is by Mobile Home Village, and they had provided some general or typical sizes that you might see of single, double, and triple wide units. So your single wide, generally between 12 and 18 feet. Right now, the city's requirement is 40 foot, 4,000 square foot in area for the pad. It's fine. I think the side setbacks, 10 feet, or at least the minimum separations are 10 feet. You've got enough width for that. When you start to look up into the double wide, you got 20 to 36 feet, depending on the design of the unit. That 40 foot wide now certainly doesn't work. So it's something to consider, looking at these potential, different unit sizes. And then of course the triple wides getting up to 30 and 54 feet. And I just had to, there may be some folks in the room I don't know, but a 3,600 square foot triple wide mobile home. I don't even know of a lot of single family homes that are coming in right now. I don't know that I've ever seen a 3,600 square foot triple wide mobile home, but if that does exist.
It does.
Okay, and if it's something that y'all want us to look into, again, it's just something I think that needs to be considered. Right now, the minimum 40 and 4,000 probably limits that for some of these new developments, at least, that are going to potentially come in. But this was, again, just to at least respond to some of the questions about, what are we looking at when we talk about these different sizes of units, and how does that respond to the city's current code? So with that, that's kind of the general overview. And we can go back to these concepts and go through them in order. But I think that the big one that we are looking for the direction on tonight is, how are we dealing with the existing mobile home parks that are here today that don't have the correct zoning? What is the direction of the city in terms of staff providing language to look at options to potentially rezone that property? It's non-conforming today. Is it that it's non-conforming moving forward? We treat it as a non-conformity. You cannot enlarge it. You cannot expand. You cannot add new mobile home parks. Once they become unlivable and they move out, they're gone. I think that's kind of the primary direction that we would like to get from you all tonight, and how we bring language back next time we come to see you. And then, of course, a couple of these other things. I think the other big topic was the RVs or the park mobile units on the sites as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your summation of that. Like you say, if we can attack this one thing at a time,
Yep.
and I'm going to go ahead and start this a little bit. And one of the concerns and the reasons we brought this up is because we have we have about 6 or 7 mobile home parks out there. Some of them are in pretty bad shape. And originally, back in the day when they said you can't replace these, the idea was that eventually they will go by the wayside. But they haven't done that. It's been 40 or 50 years, and they're still out there. People keep fixing up these old mobile homes. So they put roof overs them, whatever, roofs over the top of them. They keep patching them up, and some of the parks look pretty bad. So that was, I think, our primary reason for getting into this in the beginning. So one of the things that you guys have come up with that I am in 100% agreement with is the planned development. So if we can go back on these mobile home parks and look at them one at a time and put them under a PUD and get with the owners and say, this is what we would like to see happen, so that we can get them closer to conformity. They may not be totally in conformity with our new regulations, but closer to conformity to where they're not a hazard, where the fire trucks can get in there, where they are enhanced, they're improved. Then we can come up with that PUD and make an agreement with them. I think that would be good, and that would be feasible for them possibly financially, as well as beautifying our city and our parks. So I'm very much in agreement with that on a one-for-one basis, that we can go in and talk to them on that and come up with some kind of a plan, and that will be a one-for-one plan. Each one may be a little different depending on what they have now and what they would like to do. So that's my feeling on that part, but if we could just maybe limit it to that part first and then go on to the next part. What are my fellow council members' thoughts?
Well, Charlie, you actually pretty much condensed everything that I was going to mention as well, because I'm uniquely aware of the city ordinance where we eliminated the replacement of motorhomes, mobile homes, back probably 15 years ago, maybe 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. And we actually eliminated an entire park, which is right behind the old Rose Hotel, close to where across from where the police station is. And now it's just a vacant field. Whoever owns that, I don't know anymore, but they might be very interested, the owner, and find out exactly what our minimum standards may be for that type of park. But yes, each park has to be taken, I want to say, on its own merit, because they're all so different, incredibly different. So yes, you pretty much consolidated all of my thoughts, and I think that's a good direction to move in. Yep.
Mr. Bishop, any comments?
No, I'll agree to all that. I don't have much to add, but that was all very good points.
Okay. Mr. Carlisle?
I think our whole purpose, and you pretty much squared it away, is we're just trying to make what's there look better and work with them, and possibly put bigger mobile homes in, and not these little bitty things that are patching from the 30s and 40s.
Yeah,
Some of these places have been around that long, I think.
Since the 50s.
50s.
The one across from the police station actually had some from the late 40s in there, from what I understood. And that became a drug haven over there, which really kind of precipitated this whole idea of creating the ordinance where we don't allow them to replace the trailers.
Right, and there's a parking issue.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have nowhere to park. So
Yep.
I think this is a great idea. We need to help them and make it look better all at the same time.
Mr. Stewart?
Well, I like the idea of the PUD as well. I think we need to set some minimum standards for sure with that. I think the life and safety issue is important. I don't have a problem about small. That part doesn't bother me at all, because of the small home
Mini homes.
thing that's going across the country that has merit.
Tiny
But
homes.
if we set some minimum standards, and some of those are going to be pretty hard to achieve in some of these parks. Like, for instance, the fire needs in order to pull in and pull out or back up or whatever has to happen. I suspect that they're not going to be able to do that in some of those places, which will prohibit us from allowing them to make any changes or even have a PUD if they're not able to meet those minimum standards. So it's going to be a problem no matter what. And every one is going to be different based on the park. So, would that be zoning that's going to be involved with this, or?
Well, on the PUD, I guess we have to get zoning.
It's
for the
zoning, yeah.
PUD. But
Well,
now there
yeah.
are, on a couple of these non-conforming, there's by use and by design.
Yeah, right.
And so I think by use, that's zoning, right?
It would be, and that would be, the PUD would be an actual zoning, so it would come
Yeah.
before you. And again, like I mentioned, it would require that plan. And so as part of that process, that would be the time to
Mm-hmm.
go in. We need to get that inventory of the pavement widths, the
Right.
roadways, the radii even. I know there's a couple that we've looked at that I'd find it hard pressed that maybe a fire truck could even maybe make it around some of those
Yeah,
corners. And
there's some of them are
Tight.
inaccessible in some of them.
so those would be the things that we would look at as part of the zoning process, and you all can condition that, and that becomes binding with that zoning. So yeah, those would all be things to look at, and of course
Yeah.
coordinate with fire.
It's going to be a
and-
tough job.
Yeah, this won't be easy.
But it can be done, I think, and one of the things is that, we can get newer units in there and get rid of some of these 1940s or 1950s units possibly.
Well, but you're talking about a private owner and their business. You can't say that. You don't own it. This is America, buddy.
Well, that's true, but if we give them an avenue to get there, I think that, and make it profitable for them to do that, I think
Yeah.
that those are the avenues that they'll take.
Yeah, I don't
Right
think
now,
they're-
they have no avenue.
Well, I agree with that. Although I suspect the finances aren't huge in most of those parks, and they're struggling.
I
So
was gonna say we could, we could give them an avenue, but I think the prohibitive basis is what it's gonna cost to redo that. When you have to take a 10 and 12-foot road and make it a 50 or 20 to 30-foot road,
Yeah.
like the radius is, and the one behind the gas station, it's what, 24 units in there?
Oh, yeah.
Well, to do anything with that one, you're gonna take half of those units out of there, so I mean, it's a cash flow issue that
Right.
comes for these people,
Yeah.
so no matter what, and I agree if there's an avenue that we wanna give them as an out, that if they can conform, but I think when you're in reality, when you take a look at having to build a road and having to do all this other stuff, make parking spaces, take away half your mobile homes, they get paid weekly on most of these
Yeah.
homes anyway. It's gonna be prohibitive, but it is an avenue, I mean,
And some of
we're doing something. If we don't do anything, they're gonna be just like they are. If we do something, they're probably, the ones that are there are gonna be the ones that are, as they deteriorate to the point or burn down, they can't replace them. It's gonna happen over time anyway, so.
and maybe just making some improvements on them. We may not be able to get them up to our new standards, but if we can get them to improve some. So maybe that road doesn't go from 10 foot to 20 foot, maybe we get them to go from 10 foot to 14 foot on that road, or something where you can get a fire truck in, and maybe you do have to still back that truck out instead of being able to come around in a U shape. But right now, you only have the 10-foot road, so maybe it's a compromise, and through the PUD, I think maybe we can come up with some compromises.
Right, exactly.
well, I like that word compromise. So I'm
Well,
with you
Charlie,
there.
I think you hit it on the head when it's individuals. You have to look at each one of them. Like the one that Tom brought up, there's nothing there right now.
Yeah.
I imagine they're pretty open to doing something to get some revenue. So-
Right.
And underground there, you still have the pipes for sanitary sewer and probably electrical,
Water.
where all the stanchions were.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of those are on septic still.
That might have been as well, too.
I would not be
That's-
surprised at
yeah,
all.
you may be very.
Well, and that might be another thing to look into as well.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where the location of these are, and I'm not as familiar with the city's utilities with the ordinance, but, with connections, being within certain radius or a certain area now, those may be things to look into that, they are on septic right now, and that becomes a safety issue as well, especially when we're talking about, if we're gonna allow these things moving forward, you wanna improve on it. Now, again, there's a cost associated with that as well. So, again, I think that's part of the conversation to have, but, these are all things that we could address through that process.
I think the good thing on the non-conforming side, we have, 5?
6.
So it's not a multitude of
Right,
ones out
yeah.
there to take a look at to see, but I think you have to look at, if somebody wants to come up, put a new one in, you're not gonna allow them to put that 14-foot road in. They have to-
Exactly.
You have to build it to code.
Right.
Right.
Yep. All right. Any comments on that particular part of this from the public? Okay.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Ayotte. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Manufactured Housing Association. We're located here in Tallahassee, and we're a trade association representing the manufactured housing industry, home builders, community owners, retailers as well. So we obviously have an interest in policy at the local level. And so, first of all, I want to compliment you on addressing this because these are some thorny issues out there. There's a lot of older mobile home parks out there that some of them are in disrepair, and something needs to be done. I'm glad that you're also talking about mobile home parks that are currently, I guess, in a non-conformance design situation, so they have the right zoning, and providing some flexibility for those communities to possibly be upgraded and even expanded if that's what is required to get them conforming. One concern that we have, and would love to work with you, is this, and I know you adopted an ordinance 15 years ago, and quite frankly, I don't think that ordinance really worked. I mean, you basically said you can't replace an older mobile home in one of the communities that is a non-conforming use. But those communities, continue on and on and on. And you said it's 15 years ago, and a lot of those communities are just not in any position to be closed at this point. One thing that I'm concerned about is I'm assuming that these communities initially were permitted to be a mobile home park. And the basis of a mobile home park is people go in and they buy a home and lease a lot there. What's happening now is you're basically said our whole goal was to drive these businesses out. We wanted them to close because they were an eyesore. What I'm suggesting is a more compelling argument may be to provide incentives for them to upgrade those communities by bringing in newer homes. And hey, there may be different requirements that you're looking at, but allowing older homes to be replaced, because as long as homes cannot be replaced, the homeowner or the community owner will do everything they can to make sure that that home exists. And so what's happening is we're perpetuating obsolete housing. And so I think there's ways around this. I would love to be able to work with the city and the consultants and provide some input if you'd be willing as well. But I just think there's these are sticky issues. I'm glad that you're addressing these issues. But the industry does have some concerns, and we're on top of this and would like to be involved with you in whatever policy decisions that you make going forward.
Very good, thank you very much. And that's kind of what we are trying to do here, is to make it feasible to where these units can get upgraded, as long as they're not so far out of kilter that we just can't live with it anymore. So, but yeah, some of the newer units are more hurricane resistant, for instance. And, I know that the wind load capacities have changed over the years. So these are some of the things that we'd rather see in the future. And maybe even to the degree where some of the bigger units might have to get replaced with a smaller unit, so that there's a parking spot there where there wasn't before, or something like this. But these are the things that I think we can work through, and we certainly, I believe, will welcome any help in that area that you can present with us too.
Mr. President, can I
Yes,
make
sir.
a comment too? I think I mentioned this at a meeting prior to this some time ago when we began to discuss the direction we were going to be taking, or hopefully moving toward. And I used the quintessential, if you will, example of St. Petersburg, which back in the 1940s was the mobile home capital of the world. Everyone from up north who was coming to Florida went to St. Petersburg, and almost half of the streets back in those days were mobile homes, and they were the little small ones, the tin can types as we call them now. In the interest of saving time and money and effort, I would think the city of St. Petersburg would be the first place to go and find out, what have you guys done? You probably have the oldest stock, or had the oldest stock, of mobile home parks in the country. And see what direction they went, and see how that fits with our mobile home parks, which go back to at least the early or middle 50s.
Yeah, according to some of our notes too, I believe St. Petersburg is one of the communities that allows replacement of the mobile homes. So, it's, I think it has to be a newer one than the one that they're replacing.
I didn't read that, but
Yeah. Okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Eastman is wishing to make a comment.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to chime in a little bit with the Central Florida Planning Agency. My name is David Eastman. I'm a general counsel to the Florida Manufactured Housing Association. And I would echo what Jim Ayotte just said about trying to work with you and seeing if we can come up with a good solution for both the homeowners that are living in the communities, the park owners who are making a living there and apparently had an approved mobile home park at some point in time that's now become non-conforming. But I was troubled a little bit by the suggestion that you step into the area of permitting the lots in those parks. The key, I think, to this is to try to stay consistent for business owners coming into the city of Sebring and working with you. The State Department of Health has standards that they adopted back in 1995 regulating lot sizes, and they divided the universe into single wide and double wide lots and said this is the minimum standard for single wides and this is the minimum standard for double wides. They licensed the park basically on those two size requirements. But what I understand you have at this point is a single 4,000 square feet and 40-foot minimum distance. I would suggest taking a look at what the state regulation is, because someone who comes into the state of Florida wants to build a park, they're going to have to get licensed by the Department of Health. They're going to impose their minimum standards. To have standards that are different than what the state has is probably counterproductive, just in terms of a business owner who wants to invest in your city and would like to make sure that they comply with all the requirements. It's duplicative and it's in conflict. And the second thing is that the state of Florida also in Chapter 723, which is the mobile home parks, 10 or more mobile homes in a mobile home park fall under Chapter 723. And that's a preemptive statute that establishes protections for the landlord-tenant relationship. It establishes protections for homeowners as well as community owners. The one thing that is set out in that statute is that the park owner has the right to replace a home in a mobile home park. And I know we're talking about non-conforming uses and that they are not allowed to be replaced. However, my understanding, to kind of take up on what Jim Ayotte was just saying, is that these mobile home parks were probably permitted at the time that they came in. They were appropriate under the zoning and were approved by the city as well as the Department of Health. Now you're saying they're zoned incorrectly, and so therefore they can't replace a home. And the state statute does allow for replacement of mobile homes in mobile home parks. And if there is either a homeowner who wants to replace their home or a park owner who wants to replace a home that's moved out, the statute authorizes that and says that's allowable. I think it would be really important to make sure that what the city does is consistent with state law, and we try to dovetail those requirements in such a way that business owners and homeowners and parks are all protected in this process.
Interesting.
makes sense.
I'm going to defer a little bit of the state versus city legality to our city attorney here. And I believe he would be best to address that.
And Mr. Eastman and I disagree respectfully on whether 723 allows or prohibits the city from having, from addressing that. That statute deals with the landlord-tenant relationship, which the city is not attempting to regulate the landlord-tenant relationship between the owner and the tenant. That said, if there's a way that the city can address the concerns that Mr. Ayotte and Mr. Eastman have described, that's certainly a better way forward than Mr. Eastman and I arguing over what 723 means here.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind adding that it seems to me fundamental to the landlord-tenant relationship that a landlord is able to lease a permitted lot, permitted by the state of Florida, to a homeowner who wants to live there. That is how the landlord-tenant relationship is created. I don't see that there's a conflict between replacing a home and there being a landlord-tenant relationship in that situation. But Mr. Swain and I have had this discussion, and I'm sure he's not changing his mind. I'm sure I'm not changing mine.
Well, if we can find a way forward, if we can find a way forward on this, that would be great, especially as we look forward to a possible new ordinance here. Yes, sir.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood the connection here. You, obviously, you've read and have digested Florida Statute 723.
I have looked at this one part. I have not looked through the part he's talking about. Yes, sir. And
Correct.
There's court decisions on replacement units and whether those for non-conforming.
Okay.
Property. I'm sorry if I'm
And then I have,
jumping ahead of you.
would I be, would it, can I assume that he has read our ordinance as it currently stands?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so we're back to, yep, we're not quite on the same
We read it
wavelength here.
differently.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, sir. Any additional comments? Mr. Eastman?
I would be glad to prepare something that I'll send to the city council on what I believe is the appropriate way to look at this. But I think rather than getting all crossways about that issue, what I was trying to point out really was, let's take a good hard look at what the state regulation is and make sure that you're in conformance with it. There's no reason to get into a dispute with the industry or with an individual park owner about something that doesn't need to be a dispute. I really think the city of Sebring is known for being fair and is known for encouraging business. And I think that's something that we all ought to be working towards. I think it's a good opportunity to have some good, high-quality, cost-affordable housing in the city of Sebring. And mobile home parks do provide that through private industry, not through government loans or government grants. That is something that's done for profit. And they do a very good job of it. I can appreciate that there are a number of older parks here that are not, I've heard it tonight, said that they're not very good looking, or they're not, they're not the best tenants perhaps in those communities. And I can appreciate that that is a problem in some situations. But we'd really like to work with you all to see if we can have the best outcome in this process.
Very good. That's,
Well
I
said.
think, what we're looking to do also. So does that give you some pretty good direction where to
It
move
does. I
forward?
think what I'm hearing is
Clear as mud.
the PUD option is definitely an option to look forward to and provide that. I think we'll talk in a second here a little bit more about standards, but we'll certainly work with council and city staff to coordinate. I've got some other notes here, maybe look into some ideas of some incentives as well to provide the newer mobile homes. I think what I'm hearing as well is the city would like to see, if homes are coming in, how do we get them to be, newer mobile homes? I think part of that also, and something we'll go back and look at as well, is how do the stamps, and I'm sure the folks on the call also are probably aware of this, but all mobile homes have to have a seal that's borne by the housing HUD. So I think some of the questions there would be, how does that seal get approved, and making sure that the seals that they do approve on those mobile homes do suffice for the livable units that come in. So I think we'll address this, and we'll work with council, we'll work with staff to make sure we come back with something that addresses all of these different issues.
Well, that should cover pretty well the existing mobile homes. I think on some of the newer ones, if we can look at some of the newer ones, and keep in mind too that maybe some on the existing, but we have recently annexed 3 mobile home parks that were authorized under the county. And there may be future mobile home parks that are built under the county regulations that we may end up annexing.
I would say that's gonna happen.
Yeah, so keeping that in mind, I just want to say that we don't want to make our requirements so hard on new mobile home parks within the
Right.
city that somebody will go to the county, build one, and then we have to, we end up annexing it. So keeping in mind that we might want to get somewhat close to the county's regulations on this, or, maybe we don't want to annex them in the future if the county is so lenient with theirs that we just flat don't like that. But keeping all that in mind, moving on to the new stuff, you brought up the single wide, double wide, triple wide. One of my suggestions is with the single wide, make sure we at least have 1 parking place, the double wide, at least 2 parking places. And maybe even more for the triple wide. I can't see having a minimum of just 1 parking place for a double wide. you've got a family in that, so that would be one of the things on the new ones that I would suggest. But, what do you guys think on that as well as other stuff on the new ones? Ms.
Well,
Pittman?
on the new apartment complex that we talked about earlier, I think it was 1.9 parking spaces per unit.
Yeah.
And those were I think there were 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom ones, if
Some
I'm
of
not
them were,
mistaken.
yeah.
So I think two full parking spaces is too much.
Okay. Or even for the double wide?
So two
Yeah.
spaces is too much for
It's
per
too big of a
mobile home
requirement,
unit?
Is that what you're saying?
So let me ask you,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, there's different standards everywhere.
Well,
I'll tell you a lot of the standards that we've looked at is, I think they are more than one space per unit. It's a ratio. It's a fraction 1.8, 1.9.
Yeah.
A lot of them also require guest parking spaces to be provided within the park. So if you can't facilitate it on site and you do have folks that are coming, they've got an area where they can park. A big issue in mobile home parks is you do have guests and they end up parking all over the sides of the road. And then you do have an issue with fire trucks or anything else trying to come through there. So there's a number of different standards that we can look at with the parking. I was just asking the question of, I didn't know if two was too many per unit or two per double wide, or what the comment was. So we're open. We will definitely bring something forward that seems reasonable. I think having the guest parking spaces on the property is I think pretty standardized. And
Yeah, I can see how that'd be imperative, actually.
Yeah.
Do we know what the county's is?
I don't know.
Don't.
Sir.
No, but that is something, I wrote a note here.
We
We'll
should
be
find
looking
out.
at the
We should
counties
find
for
out.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely the off-street parking is a requirement, and again, that goes back to the fire trucks and other emergency vehicles getting through there. So that was just my suggestion, one for a single wide, two for a double wide. But the guest parking may alleviate some of that. How about the minimum lot sizes? What do you guys think on that?
Well, I think we take their suggestion and look at what the state is and also what the county is. I think that's a
Yep.
pretty prudent idea to have.
Does the state have different ones for the double wide, triple wide?
That I don't know. I don't know how many actual or physical standards are actually in Florida statutes or the Florida Administrative Code, but that's something I think that we need to have a discussion about to make sure that we are consistent or that we're not inconsistent with Florida statutes. But I'm not aware of physical development standards that would be applied, that the city would have to apply from Florida statute. Now, we could go back and look at that, and I could be corrected if I'm wrong tonight if there is anyone that knows that. But if not, that is something we'll definitely be looking at.
Do you know off the top of your head, David?
Yes, it's 64E-15.002, and that's the Department of Health Florida Administrative Code dealing with site sizes.
Do you know what the sizes are for single, double, and perhaps triple?
Single wide is 2,400 square feet with a minimum of 35-foot width. And then a double wide is 3,500 square feet with a 50-foot minimum width. As I said, those standards have been in place since 1995, and basically what the Department of Health does is essentially grandfather in earlier lot sizes and just said, we're not requiring anybody to change their lot sizes, but all future development after 1995 followed that standard, and that would be what would be applicable today.
Have they addressed triple wides?
No, they have not.
Do you see
And-
those?
And I'm aware of triple wides, but I think that they just build a much larger space than a double wide space.
Just go out to Tanglewood. You'll see triple wides out there.
They have them, do they?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I know at Shalimar Creek in Polk County, they've got a number of triple wides, but, I don't know the lot sizes.
Yeah. Okay.
Do
Well, that
any of
gives us
our-
a basis to work with there. Yeah.
Do any of our, I guess if you want to call them non-conforming trailer parks, are they within the CRA district? Is the one behind the Mystic Station at North Ridgewood and the Parkway in the CRA district?
Yes.
We'll make them an offer they can't refuse. And let's go ahead and develop that one and be the shining example of what we'd like to do. Go for it.
There's an idea. Talk with the CRA, maybe
Gotta
they
think
are
about those
interested.
things.
There is one or two that's pretty small, and they might be able to afford to do that. How about then, the minimum size? Right now, I think our minimum size is 800 square foot. And I just want to bring up the fact that some of these, what they call tiny homes, are more like 300 or 350 square feet. So do we want to keep that 800 square feet as a minimum size, or like a park model, I think, is only 10 by 40. I could be wrong on that, but, which is about 400 square feet. Do we want to go smaller or not?
They're in all different sizes.
Is that a different type of project? We're talking about putting RVs. I mean, the
Yeah.
question was, are you gonna allow RVs?
And that's probably a good question too. And I don't know that in any of our codes, and you all have a section on RVs, but the, minimum size of the RV, I don't know that I've seen that. Now, an RV park is definitely treated a little bit differently than a mobile home park.
Right.
And that's probably another conversation we're getting ready to have.
Yeah.
Do we want the RVs in the mobile home park? Now, would any of those changes then, if we are talking about minimum floor area or unit size, pertain to the RVs? I mean, if I did inject my opinion, I think it'd be very difficult to find RVs to really scale them back so far that if you had a minimum lot size, that you would be applying a RV to a unit, because the unit is essentially considered a dwelling unit, which is more permanent than what an RV might be. So that's certainly something we can talk about in size of RVs. If that was a door to even open. Right now, RVs are not permitted in your mobile home parks. Now, in some of the existing ones, we know that that is occurring. But again, the PUD process can hopefully maybe handle some of that. But I think if you're strictly talking unit size or floor area, I don't know if I'll lean on council too. I don't know if that's something where we go in the direction of minimum RV size consistent with if we're talking about mobile homes.
Well, sticking with the mobile homes for the moment.
Yeah.
Because some RVs are really, really small.
Sure.
But just sticking with the mobile home and the mobile home park. And I read on one of the other cities, I think, that in their mobile home parks, they allow up to 10% RVs. So you could do a
Right.
mixed mobile home versus RV. But with that exception, just in a mobile home park, do we want to keep that 800 square feet or maybe lower that to 400 or 500 or 600 square feet as a minimum? What do you guys think?
Are they making
Let's ask
them
the-
that small?
Let's ask the gentleman or the experts.
Mr. Eastman, is that typical?
Yes.
Are they making?
Well, the park trailer is, there are two types of park trailers listed as recreational vehicles. One is built to the RV code, and that is 400 square feet or less. And then there is one that is built to the HUD code, which is 500 square feet or less. And so that's about the smallest mobile home. Something built to the HUD code that could be titled as a mobile home is that smaller park trailer. So I would say the minimum size that's out there is 500 square feet. And those are utilized at times as replacement homes in the older parks. You know, you were talking earlier about the 1940s or 1950s style units that are quite small. That type of a mobile home or park trailer is a good product for that situation. It allows an upgrade to the community. It brings in the new. They have to be wind zoned just like any other mobile home.
So they're up to code.
So it's a way to approach upgrading.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that personally.
Yeah. I
And,
do
and,
too.
and,
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Eastman, there really are three classifications of what we're talking about. One would be the manufactured home or mobile homes. One would be the modular homes, which
Yes.
I believe are built on a much stronger platform to conform with minimum storm regulations. And then there's the RV, obviously, which is the travel trailer or the motor homes. But between the manufactured homes, the modular homes, and the RVs, I've seen where parks have actually mixed and matched them, and it seems to work okay. I mean, maybe there's a mixture of the size of the lots. For RVs would be one size, for the modular homes, kind of depends. I visited a place this past weekend called Ocean Breeze, and it's one of the Sun communities. I think one of the Sun communities is trying to build a park here. That's why I went and looked at it. Unbelievably beautiful, incredible. The smallest modular home on the property, and I didn't get the size of the property or I would have brought it with me tonight, was $245,000. Well, now this is in Jensen Beach. So whether we can compare it to that, I don't think that, but we don't have an ocean, within driving distance for an hour and a half. But there are those three classifications, and they were able to mix those in there and make it very attractive and very nice, which would kind of include what Mark mentioned, the tiny homes.
Yeah.
And those are all modular, correct? Mr. Eastman, all the modular homes
Yes,
are the
that's
tiny
correct.
homes?
The modular homes are allowed in any mobile home park or RV park in the state of Florida under state law. It's
Right.
Chapter 553.382.
Right?
And that section was developed really for more of a hurricane-resistant type of housing following the four storms that crossed Florida in that year.
Yep.
Francis, Jean, and Charlie.
Yep.
I forget the last one. But that has been a very successful thing, and the same concept was used in the Florida Keys after Hurricane Irma.
Right.
Replacing mobile homes in parks that were subject to a lot of flood damage
With the modular
elevated
homes, yeah.
modular homes.
Right.
And some communities did three mobile home parks with modular homes down there for that very reason.
Right.
I've got to say though too, looking at the data, if you do wind speed analysis and you look at wind zone 3, which is the most strong mobile home that's out there, it's not what's required in the city of Sebring, but it is required in the Florida Keys. They're a little better wind zone protection than a Florida Building Code home of the same, they're not necessarily the same size.
Wow.
But in the same location.
That's good.
And that's good. That's big time.
Well, I
But
think,
I would concur with you, there are the RVs, there are mobile homes, and then modular homes are the three different types. And the park trailer kind of saddles both of those things.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, considering that, I think maybe if you guys are in agreement, maybe that 500 square foot park model,
Which
might
is the
be
HUD
okay.
standard.
Which is a HUD standard.
Yeah, so I'm good with that.
I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
I think we're in the ballpark there, sure.
Okay. Jeff, does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely, for consistency. And I think the other thing I'm hearing too, what we need to go back and do is look at the definitions for these things: modular, manufactured, mobile homes, RVs, park models, making sure that all of those definitions are clear and they're consistent with Florida statutes, Florida Administrative Code. I think there's also some confusion, manufactured, what does that mean? I mean, basically manufactured is something it's manufactured. We kind of couple that under the umbrella that it's a mobile home. A lot of people think that. A manufactured home could be something that's, built off site and brought onto a standard zoning that's not even a mobile home park.
That's right.
So I think we need to have some clarity there of, when we're talking about manufactured homes, mobile homes. So we'll certainly do that too, to make sure that whatever we bring forward to you, that it'll probably include some definitions in there as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think maybe what we're leaning towards here a little bit, if I do a bit of a summary, is the mobile home parks, the RV parks are something entirely different, and then maybe a combination of those two with a park that can have some RVs in it and some mobile homes. So that would almost be three different categories. But the RVs, for instance, in my opinion, I don't think they need as much land. Most of the RV parks I've ever been in, the lots are about 20 foot or 25 foot wide. Because you pull in on one and you have a picnic table next to it, and you can put your awning out and you park your car next to it. So a 20-foot wide lot on an RV park is somewhat normal, whereas on a mobile home park, because you need much more distance between the mobile homes, you need that 40 foot, or the state standard I think is 40 foot. So there are a lot of differences on the RVs versus the mobile homes.
And I just want to note here, I'm looking at the standards. This is in your package as well. We highlighted it. the current, we've talked about the mobile home park being 40 feet and 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
The current standard for the RV park is a 40-foot wide lot with 2,400 square feet. So the 40-foot is still there.
Yeah.
So would we want to move that down, or would we want to keep that? I would think maybe for consistency, and especially if we're going to have the conversation, to have maybe a percentage of the lots be used for RVs, if that's a direction you all go.
Yeah.
I think it provides some consistency within the mobile home park. If somebody says 10% of these lots are going to be RVs, maybe at a point in time they don't become RV lots, and if we do reduce that down to 24 feet or 30 feet.
Yeah, so if you the RV parts of it, I don't think you need 40 feet wide.
Okay.
And I think what you're going to do is nobody's going to be able to economically come in and do an RV park then, if you have to have that big of a lot for each RV. I know the number of RVs per acre, according to this, is 18, whereas it's less than that, I think, for the mobile homes.
Yes, it is.
So, having a lot that's not as wide. I know again down in the Keys, the the RV lots down there are 20 feet. That's it.
Okay.
You get your RV, and then right next to it you got a picnic table, and that's it. And then the next RV. So that's what's going to make it to where we might actually attract an RV park here, if you make it a little bit more economically feasible. If you make huge lots for the RVs, they're just not
I
going to
think he's talking about the mixed use though.
Yeah, the
If
mixed-
you
well,
have to have a mobile home park and have 10%
RVs.
RVs,
Yeah.
if you make them 20 foot, then later they wanna put a mobile home there, it's too little.
You can't do that. It has to be.
Right, well,
I
that's
would
what I'm
say
saying.
it has to be
So if
designated
it's gonna
as
be
an
an
RV
RV
spot.
park, yeah,
Yeah.
one size, but if it's
Right.
gonna be a multi-use, you need to pretty much standardize it.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
Sounds like we got a lot of homework here. Aren't you glad Jennifer was not available tonight?
Yeah, very convenient. Yes. No.
If I could add one point, the Department of Health also has regulations on RV sites, and their requirement is 1,200 square feet for an RV site.
Okay, well,
And-
that gives us some
And they
guidance.
take the position that a mobile home site would accommodate an RV because they're, of course, larger size. So they do allow that permitting the placement of an RV into on a normal mobile home lot. as well.
But not the other way around.
Right, well, because they have the 1,200 size minimum.
Right.
They
Would
don't
be
go below that.
it's about half the size of, I
That's-
guess, what
that's
Florida
literally
Administrative
half
Code
our
has at
size.
2,400.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, okay.
If I could weigh in on one last thing too,
Yes, sir.
one of the reasons that Ocean Breeze Park developed the way it did was because that state law on modular homes allowed modular homes on RV sites. They still had to observe the fire code and separation distances under that fire code, but because of that, they were able to design and place, kind of a unique product there that was fit the lot, but really was a nice structure and storm resistant.
Yeah, actually, on one end of that entire park, they're demolishing and redoing all of the RV spaces and making them large enough to accommodate the modular homes.
I stayed down there one time as hosted by Sun Communities, and it was a wonderful place to stay, really a
Yeah.
nice location.
Yeah, and that's-
Jensen Beach, and then they have a marina right across the street. You can put your boat in the water and be out on the bay in no time at all. It's a really wonderful place.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're trying to encourage people
Yeah,
to
that's
come
exactly
to
what we'd like to do.
Sebring for recreation purposes. So
Yep.
I think having RV park here is a great thing. And right now, I think we have, one RV park in the city, and that's it.
There's another one coming.
And there's another one
Two more.
coming.
Yeah.
Isn't that by the same developer from the one down up in Lake Wales?
Yes.
The,
And it's
the
under
one at
construction
Canopy
right
Oaks,
now.
Yeah.
out on
Off of Youth
County Road
Carolina.
630, and they have real nice big RV sites. I don't know
yeah.
the dimensions, but they look very, very nice.
They have tiny homes there.
Yeah,
for
the newer,
rental as well.
all the newer ones, and I think Sun happens to be one of the leading corporations for developing these type recreational places throughout the state of Florida. At least they're one of the big ones that I can see.
Yeah.
They're good
One
examples.
One other comment I wanted to make, that I noticed a discrepancy or a difference, if you will, on the mobile homes standard and the RV park standard, and that's the size of them. The mobile home parks is 2 acres and the RV park is 5 acres.
Yeah.
So I would think that that should probably be the other way around, if anything, but, what is y'all's thoughts on that?
Which page are you on?
This is page 5.
Okay, I'm there.
So that's the minimum acreage to have a mobile home park is 2 acres?
Is 2 acres. That seems pretty small.
It's actually very small. Most of the codes in our region are a minimum of 5. Some of them even go up to 10 acres.
Yeah.
Sebring is a little bit more urbanized here. So I mean, as you guys maybe start to annex some things in off the periphery, 10 acres, potential. But some of these where you've got some potential infill areas that you might not quite reach. I just throw that out there. I mean, 10 is in some of the codes. 5 is what we've seen in most of our codes through the
Yeah,
region.
I think I'd like to see that at least 5 on the mobile homes, and then maybe on the RVs, because they are smaller, bring that one down to 2 acres. What do y'all think?
Well, I wouldn't even mess with the RVs, but I agree 5 for the mobile homes.
Yeah.
I would make them both.
Yeah, just do 5.
Because, well, I think on 5 acres on the RVs, if you have like 18 per acre, what you're gonna end up with is 100 RVs on there for 5 acres. That's a lot. That to me makes it only feasible for a large
Well, but if you read,
somebody to come in, not the small guy that could come
Yeah.
in and do one.
so if you read that, it says not counting for roads, open space, recreation facilities, etc. So they
Right.
just can't, you have to put roads in there and there has to be
Well,
open
it does.
space and all that.
I'm just looking out for the little guy on that and saying, okay, if a little guy wants to come in and do 50 spots, and I ran across a lot of those as I was traveling around the country.
Mhm.
And it's, it's mom and pop operation, and I'm trying to look at and say, hey, mom and pop can come in here, do a small RV park at 2 or 3 acres,
Mhm.
and they can make a living off of that.
Yeah. So what would you say the
I
standard
think
is?
the 5. The 5 I think is an average, and that's what we've seen in our region. I think 5 is reasonable. I would probably agree not to change the RV park. Keep that at 5 acres as well. That's not huge. I mean, that's not a big area when you're considering this type of
But that's
development.
still 100 RVs?
It is, and you can fit a lot in there. So I would agree with changing the 2 acres to 5 acres, and that's why we highlighted that.
How about 3 acres on the RV?
I think we need to leave it 5 because you got to put the roads and recreation
I like 5.
spaces and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna get 100.
Okay. Well, that's why we're talking about it.
5 on both?
Yes.
Yeah.
For now, Charlie says.
Yeah, for now. Well, again, I'm
next time
trying to
I'll
look out
show
for
up.
mom and pop here, and if you go out, I mean, there's huge RV parks and mobile home parks, and that's the big guys coming in doing it.
Mhm.
But how about mom and pop? Do we want a mom and pop business here, an RV park? Because that's what we're looking at. They can't afford the 100 spots, and they can't take care of it. Then you have to start hiring people. But mom and pop can take care of a 50 unit. But again, they can come back and maybe get a PUD or whatever. So there's probably still an avenue.
That's why we like 5.
Okay. All right. Any other areas that you want to bring up to Jeff?
I think that hit on most of the key points. Again, the only other one that we didn't talk about, but I think it was innate in talking about the plan unit development would be we would require an existing conditions report. I mean, that would be something that we would absolutely require for these ones that are existing today that we're going to look at moving forward and how we address them to be that baseline. So
Is
I
that a
think
survey done by you guys?
No, that would be a survey
So
done
by
by,
us?
well, no, it'd be by the owner. We would require that
Oh.
of the owner to provide all of that information. And that would be obviously a back and forth and working with them to truth that.
Well, that'd be appropriate.
Yeah. So, okay.
Okay. Any comments from the public on any of this? Okay.
One possible thing on the.
Now, come on up to the podium if you would and tell us who you are.
Garrett Lee, one particular comment talking about the mixed use, we're requiring the same size lots for all. One thing that came to mind is if, for instance, it's 40 foot for the mobile homes and 20 foot for the RVs. It might be, just thinking about design, if you had a 500-foot length of road to work on, that would be, you could fit 12 mobile homes and then have a 20-foot space perfectly left over for an RV. So it may be possible to put in, like, you could have an exception for at the end of a row, there's space if the space allows for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That it? No more comments, questions?
No more.
All right, well, thank you very much,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Okay, let's see where. I guess we're gonna move on to 10E then. And that is going to be Mr. Bobby Lee.
I think I'm up.
Before, yes, sir.
Mr. Detman,
You've
can
been
you
very
hear me?
patiently waiting.
I can hear you just fine, Mr.
Oh,
Lee.
good. Okay.
Mr. Lee,
Before
Mr.
you
Lee.
get started, I
Y'all
just
need
want
to
to make
take a
one
break?
little comment here.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Lee is asked to come in front of the council. I want to bring the council's memory up to par here and say the CRA is in the process of a complete study on the waterfront. And they are having public meetings, have had public meetings with input, as well as engineering for the retention and other components through Kimberly Horn, and that will all be required for a new plan. We are encouraging anyone with alternative ideas to present them at those public meetings per se. But Mr. Lee has asked to come in front of the council and present some ideas that he has in regards to this. But again, the CRA is paying a lot of money for some plans here. We've all been part of that up to this point, but we are open to your alternatives to listen to them tonight. So thank you.
Well, they're not just my ideas. I'm not quite that sharp. Let me point out one thing why I'm irritated, and it's not anybody here. There was an article in the newspaper today about what I was going to talk about tonight, and I think that's very bad form on the part of the reporter to report on something that you haven't even heard yet. It would have made a lot more sense to have made that happen after this presentation, but it happened, and so there you go.
That's the press. It's life, man.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to, as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I've got to say about that, so, thank you much. All right, can we go to the introduction then? Nope, PowerPoint.
I'll be with you in a minute.
Bear with us.
There's your thing, Charlie.
There it is.
Is that part of his plan?
Why would we want to put plants sitting, no, I'm just.
I'll just go ahead and start talking, and then you can read along as you wish. Basically, it was 30 years ago that we had a plan, and it was developed by the CRA, and the only thing that happened in that plan, when you go back and read it, was they developed a playground. That's it. None of the other stuff that was in there happened, and that was paid for, $100 and some odd thousand, I think, back then too, to an outside consultant. Now we have another outside consultant. We understand it's about $150,000 that they've been paid for. Their initial proposals would basically destroy the cultural center that we have down there today. Plain and simple. Our alternative plan, on the other hand, was created by a bunch of local citizens who would like to save many of those, if not all of those buildings, and improve the waterfront at the same time, instead of just having waterfront. Not there yet?
Just about.
Sorry.
It lets the anticipation build a little bit.
There it is. There we go.
That's actually just a cover slide. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh.
might as well just go on to the next one, because I kind of told them what that one was all about.
Okay.
All right. So basically, we're looking at two concepts. The plan that would obliterate many of our cultural sites, eliminate parking for those who most need it. Now, it may change, because I know that pretty much everyone on the council has said there's not enough parking. But that first plan that came across eliminated parking for all practical purposes. And you don't do that for people that are going to a library, and for octogenarians and septuagenarians like me, and soon to be other members on the council. And basically, they're developing, the way we see it, a waterfront based on speculation. Once they start that system going down that road, you can't bring it back. Any buildings that are gone are gone. So if you want to have any way to change that and hold on to it, maybe make changes in the future, you don't rip everything up. We think you can improve the 100-year-plus city park that we have, City Pier, retaining the cultural sites and the activities that are there with them, revise the parking to actually include additional handicapped for those who are handicapped, and significantly improve the pier area, including up to almost 500 feet of waterfront beach that's not there today. They're only about 200 feet, maybe 250. So the primary distinctions between their plan and our plan is we would save everything and improve it drastically, and you'll see as we go along, if you haven't had a chance to read the 30-pager yet, that it will really change the way things are down there. Next. So who are the likely patrons? You know, less than 18% of our population in the county is under 18. So there's not a bunch of Utes, if you ever watched My Cousin Vinny, who are going to be going there, because we just don't have them yet. When are they going to come? Not in the next 5 years, probably. You're talking about bringing in people who are like me, older folk who are going to live in trailer homes. We don't call them trailer parks anymore, do we? That was when I was a kid. Okay. Mobile homes and other nice places. So all that said, if you look at the water activities that are out there, we have, you can see right there, 1,350 miles of beach. That's Ocean Beach in the state of Florida. 7,700 freshwater lakes. Why would they come to Sebring to jump in our splash pond or splash pad? Isn't going to happen. Not to the extent that we would like for it to have happen. So what can we do to bring people in, at least from the surrounding counties? A couple that would come in, plus ours, because they're not going to day trip from Daytona, and they're not going to day trip from West Palm or St. Pete just to go to our little water park. So one of the things that's important is we keep having water activities, the types of sports activities that are going on. The thing of it is, they don't require any more space than we've already used. We're actually going to provide more in this plan than is there now. And if we've had 15 years worth of a triathlon and they haven't needed any more space, and we give them more space, they can expand even that. So look at that closely when you're thinking about, do we need to really change what's going on down there? So, critical thing for someone like me is I've got 4 grandkids. And this is personal, okay? So I'm not going to walk up the hill with 4 grandkids to get a hot dog and turn around and come back and go swimming. It isn't going to happen. And most septuagenarians, octogenarians, whatever we happen to be, are not going to walk up that hill and come back down. It just isn't going to happen. So what we've done is we've come up with activities in our plan that are more geared towards the whole population that we have, the demographics that fit us, from all age groups. Next. Okay, so what we're basically proposing overall is that we retain the cultural activities at the Altvater Center, create ongoing activities for all age groups, not just a smaller group, beautify and increase the functions at the City Pier area, It's gotta be much nicer than it is down there now. I proposed, since you've already got a spot up there between Franklin and Lakeview, that you were thinking about putting in an underground detention pit. I think they ought to go down there at the lake. Don't have pits down there for kids to wander around in and swallow through. They're just butt ugly, and they shouldn't be there. Now, it's more expensive, and they have to be maintained. But maintenance is gonna be a whole thing we talk about in our plan, along with safety and security and things that don't show up. So, the key thing that comes up on here is we would have the possibility of a football-sized grassy area, if you will. And I know how you were excited about the steps coming down. We've got the steps coming down. If you're excited about the grassy area, football size is 360 by 180, I believe. That's pretty good size. Talked about safety a little bit, talk about maintenance as we go on. Those are critical things. The components of the plan, there are 17 things we'd like to add in here for you. The event pavilion, if you've been out to the airport, to the racetrack, when the Florida band is playing, has anybody been to that? Florida band, you know, the university has, the Florida Orchestra comes out there and plays annually. And they could be playing down here, downtown, instead of out there, because we gotta have a pavilion, and we have this gigantic field out there that people could bring in their chairs, because they bring in their chairs out there, so why not downtown? Same kind of thing. We would have an expanded beach, splash pad. Everybody wants a splash pad, so we threw in a splash pad. I thought kids ought to just, wander around the water. That's what normally they do down there today, but no, we gotta have a splash pad. So playground area should be expanded because it gets used a lot. When you go down there and you look at the kids, they're having fun down there. The outfitters, of course, you know that we're gonna have to have some outfitters. I question how long they're gonna last down there, but it'd be great if they really expand, and it does really well. I hope so. A game area where we throw in all kinds of different games for them to play. You can read the list for yourself there. An outdoor gym. This is one my wife came up with. I wouldn't have thought of it. They've got neat machines, and you can see the little things in the next slide where people may not be able to see it very well. But there you go, on the left. If you're a runner and you like to go through exercise routines, you can do that right here at the same time. And who would have thought they had a concrete, can you imagine that? I didn't know they had those, but they're available. They can be put out there, and the only problem would be we'd have to have somebody with a power washer once a week to go down and power wash the thing, as you know they're gonna get sprayed. Nobody's gonna have to deface them for the fun. There's a type of splash pad. I've never been a bocce ball player. My 10 minutes are up. I have to go a little bit longer.
That mean your time's up?
All right. But you can see some of the things. The one I really like is the one in the middle, and we'll talk about it in just a second. So we'll go on to the next page and see, those are just examples of what we got out there. Some more components. One of them in the middle is a dog waste station. Now, I would assume that Mr. Carlisle could talk to us about creeping eruption. If the rest of you don't know what creeping eruption is, then that's why you have doggy stations and places for people to pick up bags and put poop in and that sort of thing.
We call it ground itch.
Could be. It's, he can explain that to you later, but it was something that used to happen when you walked around barefoot as a kid. I got it again when we moved down here and was digging in the dirt. It's still out there where cats and dogs are playing, so it needs to be changed. You can see a lot of the other things that we would like to see put in here. Shade trees, though, let's talk about shade trees. If you read the whole plan and you understand how critical shade trees are to what we do, 740 something gallons per shade tree, that's a lot of water to deflect. And it absorbs it, and it's not going into the ground there. Also, in talking to people down on the beach, you'll find that one of the most important things to them is they want to be in the shade. It's 90-something degrees outside. They don't want to be in the sun. So we may have a area where they could go be in the sun and play certain games, but most of them want to be either under the shelters where they've got picnics, or they want to be under the trees with their kids. They like that shade. So to cut those down and put in palm trees doesn't make a lot of sense to me. In fact, I'll quickly throw this out to my neighbor. My neighbor got up and spoke at our last meeting, talked about how we could just go ahead and cut down all the trees as far as he was concerned. Well, he has a whole bunch of gigantic oak trees in his yard just like we do. So I'll leave that as it is. All right. Stormwater detention, we already talked about that. There are different ways to do it. It got sideways. That's supposed to be now is ugly. Flip it over. And the transition is when they're building it. And then the one over there is supposed to be new and hidden. So it works fine on mine, but I guess we just didn't translate very well. So, safety and security next. We've talked about this probably enough as far as the safety and security, the lights and the cameras and all that stuff, and how it can all be interconnected with the police. And now there ought to be a system for doing that. It could be lit up there. It ought to be the safest place in Sebring, other than maybe the Circle. So make them safe, both. And it ought to be kept just as well maintained as the Circle if you want people to be down there. If it's not well maintained, then don't build the darn thing. Don't even start that way. We've already learned what happens in Sebring when you don't maintain our parks. This is not the time to screw that one up. So, two other things that are important to me as a parent and a grandparent is, and we lost a little girl when I was a kid. Her father ran over with his boat as a VFW and cut her back up and killed her. So I'm opposed to having motorboats where the kids are swimming. I don't know how you want to try to organize that, but you shouldn't have motorboats out where kids are, plain and simple. And we always had a lifeguard. You remember that? It was always a lifeguard out there in the summertime. I mean, not the winter when nobody swam, but probably from May until 1st of October, there was a lifeguard out there. That's really, really important for the city to have that. But if you build this thing up, whether the plan's being brought down by Kimberly Horn, or you build one up the way we're looking at, or there's a combination of the two, or whatever, if you're not going to protect people, we're in trouble. Okay, maintenance. I already talked about it. I probably talked about it enough, but it just needs to be like the Circle, well maintained, well groomed. If you don't, you're not going to attract people down there, other than the folks that can't go anywhere else. And we're not trying to attract the people that can't go anywhere else. We've already got them there. You can go down there, there are 30 cars down there on Saturday and Sunday. That's because they don't have any place else to go. They're not going to drive to Disney on a weekend. They're going to come to our little lake because they can. Right. The restrooms. Do I need to say anything about the restrooms other than tear it down and start all over again with nice new ones? It really ought to happen because they are just dreadful. And dumpsters. Who in the world would put a dumpster in a show place? Got to go. If it's not well maintained, it will slowly die. And it may be rapid, maybe 1 year as far as I know. Okay, this is quick. This really applies only to the arts community we have here. There are two options basically that we're looking at, that we thought of, and there are 20 options we got. But under this plan, if you look at, on the left, you've got the museum, the Arts Museum, that little blue thing. I can't quite reach it, but it's right next to the theater. If you look at the right one, it's a little bit bigger. It's been expanded. And what happened was they lost their building over here to make that happen. So if it's here, you're leaving all the buildings, including where they have their visual arts center, and they can still do all their training of all the kids and all the folks on art. Over here, ideally, you would be able to find a place for the Arts Council downtown. Let me explain why I think that's important. Brevard, North Carolina. There are probably 5 art stores downtown in Brevard, North Carolina, a town that's smaller than Sebring. And there are probably 15 restaurants. So that's 1 for every 5. That's amazing. They're everywhere down there. There's no reason we couldn't have the same thing, and if you had the Arts League in one of the buildings downtown, and they may not necessarily want to go there, but if we can afford for somehow for that to happen, that really attracts people from a totally different genre to downtown Sebring. They're not just coming to eat from, Loretta, or where I live. They're coming from all over the place. I don't think the water's going to draw them in, but I think the arts will draw them in. Okay. Lastly, you can read all it for yourself if you want to. Site security and safety and maintenance, to me, are the critical factors on this whole thing. If you don't take care of that property and protect people that are down there, you might as well forget it. Doesn't matter whose plan you have. And it's not that difficult and it's not that expensive. However, as a city council, you're gonna have to look at the budget and you're gonna have to figure out, how do we add another person or 2 to oversee what's going on down there? Because the way we've got it right now, everybody's stretched thin. And you're gonna have to expand a little bit to do that. Or, from my perspective, put the tax money somewhere else, which we don't want to do. We want to see that whole area built up. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Any council members have any questions or comments that you'd like to address Mr. Lee to?
Well, I appreciate him working so hard. It's well thought out. Appreciate you spending time on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to also say that there's a lot of different points you made that are very good, that we do need to take into consideration. I particularly like the issue of safety and maintenance. Whatever we do down there, we need to do it right, and we need to keep it up correctly. So I appreciate some of those comments that you have.
If I might enlighten with that.
Yes, sir.
My dad's been gone a long time, but I'll never forget one of the admonitions he gave me time and time again. If you're going to do something right, do it right the first time.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Any comments from the public in regards to what Mr. Lee has proposed? Okay. Certainly, yes, come on up. And
my name is Larry Felder. I'm on the board of the Art League.
Yeah.
And, I agree with everything Mr. Lee is talking about. And as far as the arts portion of that, I would like to comment that my wife and I owned a gallery in the little town of Rockport, Texas, a few years back. And when we moved to town, it's really kind of a small fishing town, but it was known for its arts. It's had that same kind of history of similar age as the Art League here. One of the reasons I got involved in the Art League, because I could see some promise of what was going on. And when we moved to Rockport, when we retired, and we opened an art gallery, there were 17 art galleries in this small town. There was an art center with over 800 members that had been there, as long as our Art League has been there. But to see the synergy of a little historic downtown with so many art galleries and restaurants and a strong art center, they taught a lot of people art through the years. Those people became teachers. They opened art galleries. This is the opportunity we have here to really allow the arts to bring the right type of settlement, the right kind of people here. And as I was on the TDC in that town, and I was president of the the Heritage District, where our gallery was, and got involved in a lot of city planning and urban development, walkable communities, that sort of thing. And there's just an opportunity to bring the right kind of people, the right kind of businesses, the amenities for when a business is looking for a town or people are looking for a retirement, get away from the big cities. We were living in Bradenton the last 6 years. We've been here a year now. And I love what I found in this community, the small town atmosphere, a little less traffic. People are coming. That's why real estate's doing what it's doing right now. And knowing about the European model of how a circle, there's not very many surviving in this country, but having a circle with spokes of a historic downtown is so unique. You know, we're really lucky to have that here. And I know through one thing or another that has happened over time, that you get some depression, economic depression. It's just a pendulum. It swings back. The CRA is working right now to help bring that back. I think there's opportunities there. But the arts, if we did have a location on the circle where we could be more involved in the retail aspect of art, it does attract art galleries. Art galleries attract Sunday drivers from the Highlands County Metropolitan District, I would say, to go for a drive and visit some art galleries, spend money in the restaurants, look at the shops. You know, it starts building and there's a synergy there, and it doesn't happen overnight. You know, this may take a few years to build, but one of the key components of doing that is having a strong art center, art museum that starts attracting other people in the arts that may want to start a gallery, and more restaurants brings more people, and there's a reason to really come downtown. So I just want to say that we're open to several directions. We're not tied to any one particular direction of staying in one place or another. I want to help do the right thing for the survival of our organization and the health of this city, and particularly the historic district. So we really want to have that conversation of how can we get down on the circle, possibly with a second location, but possibly with a large enough space where we could put it all in one location. And we're spending a lot of money right now because we have 2 locations that we really don't need to be spending. And times are tough. So we really want to have these conversations with the CRA and you guys, so that we're doing the right thing, you know, coming in the future. And I think where we move or where we should be plays a role in your decisions as to what's going to happen down on that waterfront. So we want to be part of that thinking, and would encourage some meetings to that effect.
Thank you.
Charlie,
Yes, sir.
the safety part he was talking about, I was there the day the little girl ran over. She was outside the swim area. We definitely don't need to encourage motorboats to be around the swim area. And if we're going to encourage swimming, we definitely need somebody there to watch. And that's what happened. It was a tragic accident. But I guess my question is, have you proposed this to the CRA, your plan? Have you sat down and talked to them and showed them that plan?
Unfortunately, you weren't here at the last meeting.
Yeah, I was
Did you
laying
recall
up in the
you were out
hospital.
there trying to overcome that kidney stone? And Mr. Detton basically asked me, had I given it to the CRA yet?
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I'd like to say to Mr. Lee that I actually read this document, page 1 through page 30, and I guess page 31 was for notes. But what I did notice was you and your helpers have taken a serious look at a balance, I want to call that, where we can all coexist, if you will. What's there, what can be preserved, and in which way it could or even should be done. If you look at the second to the last page, I believe it is under conclusions, item, is it number 10, I think? Yes, conclusions. I especially like the one where you took that leap forward, not just preserve everything and leave everything as the status quo, but that it contains 17 new and improved enhancements. I mean, that kind of says it all. You've done a great job with that. I applaud you and your helpers, and I thank you for bringing this forward.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, come on up and tell us who you are.
My name is Leonard Bryant. I've had a place out here for 20 years. I also have a place in Palm Beach County. And I was just an observation that in as many years as I've been kicking around Highlands County, I'm still waiting on the CRA to do something downtown. And now they want to go down to the waterfront and spend their money down there. I was hoping for more improvement around the circle, and I don't think that their idea, if they build it, people will come. Where are they coming from? Just like the man pointed out before, they're going to go to the ocean, they're going to go to the beach, or they're going to go to one of the other 100 lakes. They're not necessarily going to come to Lake Jackson if they build it. And I just think there's a lot of money they spent on planning that I know you guys probably agreed to, but I just think that it was probably something you should have considered before, was maybe improving what you got down there already. And then also I've heard from the Art League how they got promised a whole bunch more than what they received from the CRA a lot of years ago, and they never really got anything but the building they have and none of the other enhancements that was supposed to happen. So anyway, I just hope you guys consider what's best for the community.
Well, thank you, sir. I do want to just point out a couple things, and that is, first of all, the CRA is working on the downtown circle. They purchased 4 buildings down there. They've got RFPs on 2 of them. They have restaurants coming in. They have RFPs out for the other 2 buildings. They're spending a lot of money on the circle and on 1 or 2 of the spoke streets right there. They bought a building that the city council may end up, well, we are looking at it to maybe possibly move the city council chambers over there. So they are doing not just the waterfront, but they are spending a lot of time and money and effort on the circle as well. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. They are trying to move forward. As far as the CRA in years past, we have a new CRA at the present time, and a new leader on the CRA, and they are doing new things. I don't want to get into what happened in the past with the Art League or whatever, but nonetheless, I think they are moving forward in many areas.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
yes.
Charlie, I think our CRA is not getting the credit they're due with the effort and the time and the investment that they've made in the downtown area. It's not well known by a lot of people if they're not following that, if they're not laser focused on what's going on downtown. Hang on, because within a year or less, you're going to see a transformation to downtown, especially if the economy continues on it, or at least gets better. Oh boy, that's going to be a tough one. I got some wood to knock on here, but they are trying their very best. They're not just focused on the beachfront, if you will. They're trying to draw, let's call it a link, if you will, from the beach and the downtown area to make it all one nice viable area. So stand by, and you're going to see that they're going to do a great job downtown. I have a lot of confidence in these folks.
My name is Ralph Flores. I see the CRA spending millions of dollars, but you stepped on the wrong stump here. They're spending millions of dollars, but they won't give me a damn dollar to fix my building. My roof was falling apart. They won't give me a penny. I had to terminate my building. I had to exterminate the other building they bought. They won't give me a penny. So don't tell me what the CRA is spending all this money, but they're spending money on these buildings. But the old buildings and us owners who came out with all this money to buy it, they won't help us. So they're doing a great job buying these buildings, and they got these big plans. But the hell with the people who own the buildings, they will not help them. That is not right.
So they don't own the building where you are, is that right?
No, I bought my building. I own my building.
Right.
Flat. But can I get help with it? Because I don't qualify. My ceiling, my roof is falling. Oh, that is not considered a preservation of the building. Excuse me? What language? Preservation of a building doesn't mean save that roof that's falling apart. So I respect what they're doing. They're trying to bring downtown, and it's going to help my building once they get all these buildings. But meanwhile, do I have money to fix my building? No, not unless I go and borrow money to fix my building, because they will not help building. The maximum they'll help you right now this year is $1,000. What can you do on a 100-year-old building? My building's 100 years old. What can you do with that building for $1,000? Nothing. So they're doing a lot of good stuff, but for other people and for themselves, not for the people who own the buildings right out flat.
Is there a way that we can draw our city staff along with the CRA for gentlemen like that who own their own properties and maybe come up with some plans or ideas on how to preserve that? Because I think what he's saying is, if he privately owns that building and the roof collapses and he hasn't had the wherewithal to secure it, then everything on both sides of it is for
I know
naught.
the CRA has some programs, but let me just ask David if he would step forward a little bit and address that particular situation. They do have some facade grants and other grants that I know that they give. So.
Correct. We've had about 2 years ago we had a program that was designed just for the circle, the buildings on the circle. I believe it's either $50,000 or $100,000 grant program for property owners to be able to use that to make improvements to the circle buildings. No one took us up on it. We've tried multiple different grant programs over the course of the last 4 or 5 years to try to encourage people to be able to preserve and protect their buildings and improve them. We ended up where we're at right now in purchasing the buildings because all of those grant programs were not being taken advantage of. So we do currently, I thought the facade grant this year was $1,500, but that's, there's only so many dollars, as you know. We've channeled them into the efforts of trying to purchase and renovate some of these buildings down on the circle, so we've gotten away from some of the smaller scale grant programs for this year.
So that $1,000 or $1,500, whichever it is just a facade grant.
Correct. It's primarily targeted for painting and pressure washing, stuff like that.
Is there a way to resurrect the old plan that no one took advantage of and have some money out there available?
So part of
private owners?
So part of what's happened here with us going in this new route for looking to purchase buildings, you're aware that we have sought financing from an outside lender. A lot of our funds are, under the scrutiny of what that lender will allow us to do from the standpoint of making sure that we have the money to make our loan payments. So we haven't investigated other grant programs right now. When we applied for the loan, we also had to target create a project list. So what those loan funds would be used for, and they are primarily for the use of purchasing and renovating buildings, not creating new grant programs.
So there is a little light at the end of that tunnel.
Correct.
And I know Mr. Flores, he's a very sincere and decent man, and he's put a lot of effort and time and his own money into that old building. And I remember when they were refurbishing that 20 or 25 years ago, the two gentlemen that were in partnership to do that. And that took a lot of money to put that together. You remember when they were doing the roof, so that's a 20-year roof on that, the flat portion of it. So if there's anything you can do, I think every one of us up here would encourage that, and there'd be a lot of appreciation out there for that. Because short of not having those funds or the availability for them to apply for a grant, you're buying buildings and they're doing improvements here, we're buying a building and we're giving it to someone to go ahead and put in a restaurant here, and in the meantime, he's having serious structural problems. And that doesn't make sense that if we can't keep it all together. I mean, he knows he's gotta put some of his own money in. There's no doubt he wouldn't buy a 100-year-old building if he didn't think so. But I think he's saying, I do need some help. And I'll bet you there's other ones out there who will need the same help.
I bought the building on December 2019, December 29th, 2019. So there was nothing before I bought it. I asked Christy, she said, no, the roof is not preservation of the building, tenting the building and the other building next to me and the building behind. I had to put tenting on all three buildings.
Yeah.
There was no money but it's only for preservation. I asked, what do you mean by that? Pressure cleaning the outside, painting the outside, cleaning it. I don't see how that preserves a building when the roof is falling down.
Ralph, I'm sure that you heard the same thing I did. It sounds to me like they're willing to press ahead and try to secure some funds for the same type of program that no one took advantage of back in the day, and maybe move that forward and
I don't know that we're making that obligation, no.
Yeah, I don't think
Well, I
you said
didn't ask
that.
you to make the obligation.
I don't think you did
I think what I asked you was, is there some light at the end of the tunnel, and could you be moving in that direction?
We are not for the foresee.
Well,
we're not this
then
year.
maybe I
Yeah.
totally misunderstood. I thought you said yes.
No.
Their goal is to buy buildings, to give them away.
Okay.
Well, I think that there was a window of opportunity that got missed in this situation.
Mhm.
And it sounded like to me it was a few years long.
Correct.
And that window has closed because they have changed the direction that they're pursuing the resources that they have.
Correct.
Sounds like to me that he bought the building after the window had closed.
Yes.
I thought for some reason, Mr.
He said
Flores, that
2019.
I thought that roof was a new roof for some reason on his building.
I'm sorry?
I thought that roof was fairly new, if I'm not mistaken.
Part of the roof was done to the previous owner. The part, the back, where,
The flat portion on
the
the,
flat portion of the back where there's,
Yeah.
you know, has another apartment in the back.
right,
I had to do that with Cobb Roofing, did that for me.
right.
Because that part of the roof was never done. And you can see daylight, the
So
wood is falling, was
after,
collapsing.
after the roofer got done, it was still leaking, is what you're saying?
When I bought it, I had to redo that because you can see it was leaking.
Right,
And if you move the roof tiles,
right.
you can see all the rotten wood that's up there. That was
Yeah.
that was found on the inspection when I bought the
Okay,
building.
so you knew that was happening before you bought the building?
Correct.
Okay,
So that's when I spoke up regarding about getting money for the roof with
Uh-huh.
Christie, and she said, no, that's not considered preservation of the building.
right.
I'm sorry, I went to school in this country, and I know English well enough to know that preservation is to preserve the building from falling.
Well, but you
the-
did know that prior to buying
Oh,
the
no,
building?
I bought it knowing that.
Yeah, okay.
Hope- I owned the house behind Cliff Rose. Now, before, with the other CRA that was there, they helped me with $3,000, 30% up to $3,000 for the roof. They gave me $3,000 or up to 30% for new windows
Right,
for the house behind Cliff Rose. I
right.
used to own
So
that
the
property.
CRA did a good job on that house?
They were able to give me, but it was, again,
Yeah.
it was different people there.
Right,
The different people had different ideas.
yeah, well, that's what happens.
And
That's what happens.
the idea of preservation, but explain to me what legally, what the word preservation means, preservation of a building. Pressure cleaning?
Let me come back to and just say this, that we need to get back to our agenda here.
Sorry, I just
But-
subbed in because you mentioned about the CRA. So, and it's just,
But
there's
there's different times and different programs.
And I
for different
apologize for losing
times.
my control that way.
Sometimes those programs, the door closes on them.
Correct.
So I think that's
But
kind of
still,
what's happening
but if you
here.
have enough millions of dollars to buy buildings, and here you are, there's $500,000 building, free. Oh, by the way, I have to put another
It's-
$4,000
yeah,
in there.
It's
for you.
not, it's
That's
not
not
free,
exactly
there's a
how
lot
it
of
works.
stipulations to it, but
It doesn't work that way.
let us get back to the agenda here.
Good night.
Okay? All right,
Thank
thank you.
No, I just, because you brought up the CRA, and because you brought it up, you opened the door for me to lose my cool and.
Okay.
That's
all
enough,
right.
that's enough Cuban coffee, Ralph.
All right. Okay, so that was the that was 10E. We're now going to go to 10F on our agenda, which is a public hearing. So I'm going to start a public hearing. Lakeside Structures. Purpose of the public hearing, the council has been requested to consider a change that will allow certain types of non-residential structures to be built on land on the west and north side of Lake Jackson Cove area lying between Lakeview Drive and the lake. Those structures include gazebos, pergolas, and cabanas, which can include bathrooms and outdoor or summer kitchens. The structures would have maximum impervious cover, elevation, and setback requirements, be limited to 50% opacity when viewed from Lakeview Drive, and could have electricity and plumbing, but no air conditioning or heating. So for this public hearing, we would like to get public input and comments and questions. Do we have any comments from the public?
Thank you, Councilman, for having this hearing. Thank you, Bobby, for reminding me or telling me about the hearing
Just for
this
the record,
evening.
would you tell us who you are,
Oh,
please?
yes, I was about to.
Okay.
My name is Cliff Rhodes. I represent Lori Allison. Lori owns two properties in the city limits of Sebring. One is at 3530 Lakeview Drive. That's a single-family residence on the north side of Lake Jackson, across the street from the lake. I can identify it on the maps if you wish. She owns another property on the lake, separately, separate tax account with the county. That property is, for you older fellas, it's to the left and contiguous with the Borgmeister, the old Borgmeister house, which is the single-family residence on the lake with a clay tile roof. That property is approximately 82 feet on the street, 170 feet deep on the east side, 145 feet deep on the west side. It has a just value as assessed by our county property appraiser at $42,000. So I suggest that it may be worth $50,000 or $60,000. She pays taxes on that property. It's not homestead. It's separate from her residence across the street. Friday evening, Bobby sent me your council sent me an email about this evening's hearing. I'm 67. I left the office at 5 on Friday. He was working. Good for him. Thank you, Bobby. He sent me an email which I opened up this morning to discover that he was giving me the information about the proposed ordinance amendment. And so I spoke with my client. I felt that we have had some discussions over the last several weeks that Mr. Swain may be aware of. We are in favor of the amendment, but we would request that council consider an amendment to the legal description of what would be covered by the amendment. Or to put it more basically, my client believes that her property on the lake should be buildable as a single-family residence. To the right of her is the old Borgmeister residence on the lake. I cannot be sure, but I suspect it was permitted and constructed after the original ordinance was put in place that prohibits the construction of single-family residences along that area. We know for a fact that Mr. and Mrs. Lockwood somehow were able to get their house permitted for construction, notwithstanding the fact that it was in an area that I believe where it was prohibited from the construction of a single-family residence. You have the old, what I call the old Blackman house to the right of the Lockwood residence. That house is owned by the Lockwoods, but you have three houses there, nice homes that are on the lake in an area that the amendment would now prohibit from construction, recognizing if the house suffers from severe hurricane damage, total fire loss, what have you. I believe the amendment allows for the reconstruction. We have no problem with that. If I have a, can you put that up? May I approach the council?
Yeah, sure.
Is that included in ours? Or is that in ours, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
This is the attachment you'll find at the end of
Yeah, we got it.
10H. Agenda item 10H.
Two attorneys in one night, so I'll watch everything. Yep.
What I just handed the council members was a map that I understand it was attached, well, it was certainly attached to an email to me from Mr. Swain that delineates the areas that would be the subject of this ordinance amendment. The shaded areas in pink would be subject to an ordinance which now allows for, would allow for the construction of gazebos and such as that without air conditioning. My client's property is, you see these two here. This one is city-owned property.
Right.
My client owns this property right here. That is correct. The Borgemeister property is here with the residence on it. The Blackman property is here with the resident, it's now owned by Lockwoods, and the Lockwoods residence is there, if I'm not mistaken. So, if you look at the, I conducted an exercise today at my office. I looked at the county appraiser's maps, and I traveled on the county appraiser's interactive map around the lake. I find I find 2 properties, including my client's, that is over 150 feet deep on both sides of the lot. The other one is a lot just to the west of the Borgemeister property, and that lot is 111 feet on one side and 120 feet of depth with a 50-foot width. Those 2 lots are the only lots within this district that are over, that are over 100 well, that one's not even over 150. There's only one that's over 150 feet. There's 7 that are over 100 feet deep, several down towards the far south end of this district.
So a buildable lot is supposed to be 10,000 square feet.
We-
These
we-
things are 11,000 and change.
12,500, isn't it?
Actually, I think it's, in this district, I believe it's 12.5.
Is it 12.5?
It's
Yes.
12.5. So we acknowledge that we would have to seek a variance. My client's property is less than 100 feet on the lake of street frontage. We recognize that we would be coming before the zoning board for a variance to construct a residence. But we think fairness would dictate, given the relative size of my client's property compared to the others, as you come on around the lake, the vast majority of them are under 75 feet deep. We would think that fairness would dictate an exclusion of this area or properties that are of some depth or more, such that the possibility exists that you could, after seeking and obtaining a variance, you could obtain an appropriate permit for the construction of a residence. The second aerial that I show you is her property to the east of the Borgemeister house. The Borgemeister house is the big house with the pool and the big huge dock out back. The last aerial that I submit is my attempt to, by the way, she indicates a plan for a 2-story structure. The footprint of the house would not be a huge footprint. She would meet the setbacks on both the street, which is 25 feet, the rear, which is 25 feet. So you have 50 feet of setback against a dimension of almost 170 feet. On one side, 145 feet. So I drew a using the county's little cursor thing that you can create square footage and dimensions. I drew an approximate 65-foot deep rectangular house by 33 feet. And if you look to the upper right, you have 21, almost 22 square foot of footprint there that could be constructed on that lot. So I'm here to request on behalf of my client, Miss Allison, that council consider an amendment to the proposed amendment, which would either exclude this geographic area from the amendment and would also now allow for the construction of a single-family residence with air conditioning on these sites, or amending the proposed ordinance such that if the lot is of a minimum depth, then the house may be constructed. With that, I thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Council members?
If this passes like it is, like we talked about, can she come back and ask for a variance at that same time, or is it?
So as it sits now, before any vote's taken, there are two ordinances that basically prohibit any structures on the lake side. Part of what, of course, what brought this up were some of the homeowners that says, I'd like to have a gazebo, a whatever, a shelter of some sort. And of course, some of it was, you telling me that I can't, because the building official had to stop a couple of projects. But my neighbor 3 doors down has something substantially similar to what I'd like, why can't I have it? So that's the genesis of allowing, some. I don't believe that she'd be able to get a variance, because a variance on its terms can't allow for something that nobody else in the area, gets to do. So it'd be special. It'd be the rules don't apply to you. Go forth. And so I don't think a variant. No, doesn't mean variances haven't been granted that do exactly that. But I don't. If the requirements are the same for everybody, I don't think she can get a variance. No.
Either way, if this passes or it doesn't pass.
Right now,
She can't.
there's no structures allowed. With a change in the ordinance, some structures are allowed, not residential. And council can allow for residential housing on the lakeside if that's what you all want to do.
How was it that the Lockwoods were able to build their house?
Don't know.
How many years ago was that? That was like 10, right?
That was in
15.
2003, the permit was issued.
Wow.
Actually, there was a variance,
Seemed like
there was a
10.
variance hearing
Oh, there was.
with
a
the,
variance.
with the zoning board to allow for the construction.
Setbacks.
With a setback issue.
Oh, it was setbacks.
January
To
14
address
of
the setback.
2003.
The lot size back there, I think, was 10,000 square feet.
And Lockwoods is bigger than 10,000
Well,
square feet.
theirs is 13 and change.
Right.
So,
So-
my guess is the
Lockwoods?
Yes.
Yes. My guess is the ordinance that would prohibit structures on the lakeside was not factored in when the Lockwoods applied for their permit.
I bet you're right.
And likely the same is true with the Borgermeister House. I haven't looked to see when that was built, but that's.
It's certainly older, but I suspect it was.
Yeah, that
That,
was
the
before
ordinance that
1990.
prohibited goes back many years.
Yeah.
But
So, I think she's got some hurdles, but I think I'm not sure I agree with Bobby that no variance can be had. And I've read the ordinance that allows for variance, and I know what he's talking about. There's a provision that you can't be treated like no other. But nonetheless, I think that we've got some hurdles. One is this ordinance right here would just continue the former ordinances not allowing for any residential construction on the lake. If we can get this council to amend its proposed ordinance, then I think we could go before council or before the zoning board with a variance.
Just, it seems logical to me. We have houses on either side. This lot is particularly deep, unlike any of the other lots along there. Most of those other lots are 40 or 50 feet deep, which is going to preclude any single-family residences. But this one is literally sitting in between houses that are already there and that have probably been built after that original ordinance was in there.
2 out of the 3.
And
Two out of the three. Blackman House ages ago.
I was wrong about the Lockwood House. It's not 13,000. It's much smaller.
It's over 10.
Yeah.
It's over whatever the
Yeah.
requirement was at the time.
And this property is contiguous with the city lot next door.
Right.
Which, if you were to put the two together, would give you 148 feet on the front.
We'll buy it.
Well, let's not put two together.
Well, I mean, we talked about this
Maybe
earlier.
CRA
The only
should
reason
buy
I
it
brought it up.
and give it to us.
Well, has she approached the city to see if the city has any
put a
interest
garden
in selling
The
that?
city can't sell that.
That's it.
That
You're
is-
done.
That is technically a platted beach area for the little subdivision that lies between Sandra and West Boulevard that kind of goes basically from Lakeview up to the parking, what's now
Walk to
Parkway.
Park.
And so it's a platted park. The city accepted, it is dedicated, which means the city holds it for the public, but it's not ours to sell.
I see.
Because the property owner that lies directly across the street from the lot that Cliff's talking about would dearly love to be able to buy
Sorta
that
like the
and
golf
build a
course.
dock on it.
I'm sure.
Sort of like the golf course.
And just
Yeah.
for the record too,
Okay.
we're gonna have some drainage issues along there, and some of those ends of the streets on the lake side may end up being retention
Oh
ponds.
boy,
of some
don't they
sort.
ever.
So.
There's
you
a
know,
lot of flooding that goes on in that particular neighborhood.
So, yeah, that's not a lot, and probably, Cliff, your client should know that that may end up being some kind of a retention pond at some point. Just for the
No
record.
problem.
But, personally, I think that, there's houses on either side of this. This is a very deep lot. I think we
Well,
should probably make an
I
exception somehow.
understand what you're saying, but I suspect the one on the right of it may come to us as well because it's a fairly good-sized lot.
Yeah.
It's only
So
50 feet wide, though.
Which one?
To the right of the Borgmeister house as you look at it from the street.
Right.
That's a continuation of the right of way, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about the one that's next to the,
That's the one we own.
Right, that's
Not the
technically
city
the
lot.
county, it says owns
That's
it, but
66
to
feet
Mark's
wide.
point, if you allow it for this one,
Yeah,
somebody
you-
that owns a little bit smaller is going to come in and say, hey, me too, because now I'm sitting on,
Well, maybe we should make that
$250,000.
at 120-foot depth or some depth.
That's why I suggest that as an alternative.
Yeah.
In lieu of singling out my client's property for relief,
Right.
if you create an ordinance that says anything under 125 feet of depth is out.
Right.
So when you look at all those properties there, the one with the shortest depth that has been built on would be the west side of the Borgmeister, the old Borgmeister property at 120.34.
Yeah,
feet.
is that a single-family residence?
no, so that is the continuation of the road across the street.
Right, the 111 is, the Borgmeister's is 120 feet deep,
Right.
though.
Well, that's what I
So-
just said, 120.34.
Cliff's client's property and Phil Lockwood's, or the Lockwood's property are very close in size.
Yes. Yes, they
Cliff's
are.
is smaller, but they're close. What you see as you drive by, half of the Lockwood's yard is actually in that retention, or the drainage looking thing, whoever.
Right.
Whatever entity owns that.
That's
So
right.
His yard looks a lot wider than it really is.
Well, so
Right.
let me ask you,
His
Mr.
his
Swain.
setback variance was 6 feet from that lot line.
it doesn't look like it's 6
Yeah.
feet either.
Well,
yeah.
don't rely on the property
No,
appraiser,
I
otherwise
got
we
that.
wouldn't have surveyors.
I got that. Totally.
So can we make this ordinance, let me ask Mr. Swain, can we make the ordinance to where you cannot build a residence on anything unless it's at least 120 feet deep and cover that lot and still keep Borgmeisters and everybody else in check and not allow somebody that only has 50 foot deep?
There is
Okay.
probably a way to do it. I'd want to take some time to make sure with things like this, it's the unintended. There's a lot over here that no one ever, intended
Right.
for a house, and now the neighbor who's had the house built up in front of him gets really mad at council.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me try to pin
Right.
Mr. Rhodes down for a second here. I think you said you did a visual travel through.
I traveled around the lake on the property appraiser's website.
Right. Are there any other properties there that are more or 120 feet deep or more?
Let me look at my notes.
Because I think you were going in that direction when you first started. There are two,
There are two.
and one is the city.
This is
property.
one of them. Over what now?
Over 120 feet deep.
Over 120 feet deep. The 120
Well,
is your.
I think there's only my clients.
There
Can
is
you
more
pull
to
up the
south.
property appraiser?
You know, when they did the ordinance, they carved out, well, there goes.
Well, I think we need to do a little research on that then
The
before we.
He's
area
fixing to
around
do
Vets
that.
Beach and the homes that are there, some of those have been there a long time, that was actually carved out and was never included in the thou shalt not build a structure
Uh-huh.
ordinance.
Mhm.
The middle of the map that Cliff
Yep.
pointed out. So, but let me draw your attention, using the shaded one that he's given you. If you go all the way down, the original ordinance started at the north side of Don Jose
Yep.
and went up and went to Vets Beach, had that little skipped area, and then went all the way around to what you're seeing.
Yep.
It's in the vein of not having it apply to the homes that are already built, because it wouldn't, you know, for casualty loss, they'd be completely out and not be able to rebuild. But what is being proposed is that Don Jose already has the paved parking area. That's technically in the ordinance. It says you cannot. The neighboring property to the Don Jose parking lot is using that as a parking for the dentist office.
Former dentist, yes.
Yep. And then,
I'll tell you what.
That's
Still does.
that's permeable though.
Dr.
He
Willie.
built it so it's not.
He's going the other way.
It drains.
On the other side, Hirsch.
It's still
yeah.
Hirsch,
structure.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hirsch, just to
Dr.
the north.
Hirsch. Right.
Yeah.
And then,
There we go.
the one adjacent to that, which each of those are above 120, we excluded those. We can of course add them back in and make some provision for parking, or that it can be built for, you know, parking uses. That is not in the ordinance as written though.
Okay.
There's
They're not 120 feet deep. though.
just north of Don Jose's. You have a lot. That's out of that district. You're really north of. Let's assume it's in. It's 136 feet on what? Well, that's got a structure there already. No, I take it back. That's across the street from the orthodontist.
Dr. Hirsch.
Dr.
Yeah,
Hirsch,
that's
the part-
136 feet deep, but on the south side, 142.
This is 121 and 142.
The lot north of that is 121, 142.
So
Take a look.
the going north of that, there are a few that would be north of the 120, at least on one side.
Yes.
Some of these are odd shapes, a bit like an amoeba.
There's 7 over 100 feet
There.
on both sides of the lot. 7 lots that are over 100, but I think there's only 1, maybe 2 that are over 150, both sides of the lot.
20.
My client's being one of them.
Yours isn't 150, is it?
No, yours isn't 150.
Yours is 145, I think.
Okay,
120
I take
is
it
what
back.
we're
Yours
talking about.
119.25.
Christie,
We would like you to round down for
if you-
purposes of the
let
ordinance.
me, Christie wants to add something.
there's-
I'm sorry.
I'm Kellyanne.
That's not Christie.
I'm sorry. It's
But
Chris, the mask.
this is the resident homes.
That's out of the district. That's not in that. That's not covered by that.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
It's on this side.
close to the boat ramp. You
Your
excluded.
house is included in the ordinance that would be allowed to have gazebos and things like that?
This is just some.
There's several homes that, like Bobby was saying, that are.
There's 2 on the cove, in the cove. There's 2 residential properties, and I just pulled one up. This one's 77 feet deep.
Right, so the ordinance stops as you're heading around the cove from west to the north. As soon as the houses start appearing on the lakeside again, the ordinance doesn't apply from that point. The Celentanos basically, if that
Would be
one
the first
rings a bell. Yeah, that one's not included. It's the stuff leading up to that doesn't presently have a house on it, just a little past scenic.
So, let me draw another comparison. My lot where I live is 75 feet by about 150. This lot is, yes, 145 on one side and 170 on the other, by 82 at the street to 45 or 46 at the lake. I think they're fairly similar square footage, although I didn't do the math to make that
Your house was
determination.
built in the 40s.
What's that?
I said your house was built in the 40s.
My house was built in 2010.
Okay,
So the
but
lot-
there was a house there prior.
There was
to-
an older house there. I tore it down and I got a permit, but it's not in this.
Right.
It's in on
Snob
Crescent
Hollow,
Drive, not
right.
in this.
Snob Hollow.
Yeah, right.
Cliff's client's property is technically roughly half of the overall platted lot, because most of those lots through there, the lot covered both sides of the lake. At some point, that got split, the lot itself, and so this is part of that lot.
It looks like this lot is a extension of the lines of the lot across the street.
Which is that's the
This
lot.
lot, this lot, this lot was sold by a prior owner to the the prior owner of the lot your client owns now.
So it's not the case where you have a platted lot that you can't build on all of a sudden, because they carved off a portion of it. It's still, potentially big enough to build a house on.
Yep.
And it's bigger than the house you see a handful of doors south of Borgermeister, that little sort of what I think was a boathouse that eventually
Yeah.
became
Can you take it this
an
way?
actual house.
Well, that thing's been there.
It's been there for many years.
Hector was a puppy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been there as long as I can remember.
So, that person might come and say, hey, how about me too?
Are these single-family houses? Like
No.
that one there? Right here?
That's that last
We
one.
assume it is, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's right, that's what you were. 3571. Yeah. So one wonders how that house,
I think that one, my guess is that started
Predated.
as a gazebo-y something that eventually got
boathouse.
expanded on.
Yeah. Tiny
part of the
house
reason we're
that got
doing
built
this.
upon.
so I would respectfully request an amendment to the ordinance to allow for the construction of a residence otherwise meeting the city ordinances, subject to the right of one to seek and obtain the right to seek a variance, but nonetheless, that you would not apply this ordinance to a lot that is at least 125 feet in depth, running each side of the lot from the right-of-way to the lake.
Okay. Any comments, further comments from the council? Any further comments from the public? Okay.
Thank you.
Going to adjourn the public hearing. Okay, we're going to go to G now, 10G, which is proposed ordinance repealing section 26-151. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. Just tell us who you are and,
I'm Kellyanne.
okay.
I
I'm
came
sorry for-
before talking about the structures, so I know his is something separate, and mine was a freestanding structure. So I thought that this was the freestanding structure. Is that
You're
this
correct.
as well? Okay. I guess I don't know where it stands from when I came last to now.
It is a long process, and these are the steps to be able for you to be able to have the gazebo type area where you can't at the moment.
Correct, yes. I just wanted to make sure that we were still doing that for people like myself that own on the other side of the lake, because it is very difficult to enjoy my property. I know everybody wants to preserve Sebring and make it beautified. I love walkers, but to be able to enjoy my own property, it's very difficult with little kids and families, So as long as that's still under consideration, I'd appreciate it.
It is. And
All
that's
right.
what
It is.
Thank
That's what's
you.
coming up right now,
Okay. Okay.
actually. Okay, agenda item 10G, proposed ordinance repealing section 26-151. Background: years ago, the city created a WFC Wetlands Floodplain Conservation Overlay District that strictly limited structures on certain land on the west side of Lake Jackson, lying between Lakeview Drive and the lake. Members of the public have requested City Council allow structures on that land for the use and enjoyment of landowners, and an amendment to Section 2537 of the Sebring Code has been prepared to address those structures. Staff has inquired of various regulatory agencies to determine whether the overlay district is currently required, and none of the agencies have stated a need for it. Our staff recommendations is to repeal 26-151. However, I'm going to also ask council to consider Mr. Rose's amendment to that possibly.
That would be to 2537.
Okay.
And I would ask for you to approve it on first reading, and let's not schedule second yet to make sure that you don't want these repeals to get ahead of the change in the ordinance. That may take us a little bit more time to work through to provide for the larger size, sort of exception, if you will.
We've already advertised second reading.
Sir?
We've already advertised first and second reading. We advertised
That's right.
first and second reading at the same time.
Okay.
We can redo it.
So what are you proposing for the second reading? Timeline?
The future, sooner.
Sooner than
It may not be September 21. I've got to think through the change that now allows for a residence to an ordinance that didn't allow for residential development is a pretty significant change. So we may have to redo what we will do in a moment. That may have to come again. Well, if we make the change, we can't overly verbalize it yet. I think you can pass it on first reading and have it for second whenever you want to. You don't need to schedule it as part of the motion to be able to bring it up when it's ready.
So you
Does
just
that make
say
any
approve
sense?
the first reading with the second reading for the future.
Yes, sir, or just approve it on first reading of the ordinance, period.
Just approve it on first reading, period.
Wow.
Don't schedule second and final.
Okay, so I make a motion, we approve first reading of the ordinance.
Although we've advertised it that way, so some people may show up for the next meeting expecting second
Right.
reading.
And don't we need to do a little bit more research that if his
Yes, sir.
recommendation or suggestion is 125 feet deep on both sides, what about the front? I don't think we talked about,
A lot of these vary, they're sort of pie-shaped.
Right, but I mean, if we're going to have an exemption or an exclusion from
Well, they have to
the
meet
ordinance.
setbacks though.
He's still gonna have to get an exemption probably for the square footage of the lot. Correct?
Regardless,
Variance.
Right now, it's 12.5. Right, so he still has to go get that exemption.
I see.
There's a few hurdles here
Yes, there
to be
is.
jumped.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it. I mean,
It's, we're not, that's just.
I'm not sure I understand what the motion is and what the second would be, to be honest with you. Maybe Bob, you can explain it a little bit better to us.
I think they are, the motion is to approve the ordinance repealing 151, and we will schedule second and final in due course. We're not gonna pick a specific day here tonight.
Until we get some.
Okay,
And
without
at
any
the second-
exemptions at this point.
and at the second, we'll talk about this situation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, that
Okay,
works.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Any further comments or questions from council? Kathy, would you call for a vote, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Benton,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lance.
Yes. Okay.
So 10H is the one that would actually allow for the structures. The last one was sort of, we couldn't figure out why we had it, prohibition.
Right.
This one was specific to structures. This is the
what
one we
you
know we
can
need to
do.
change to allow for the structures.
Mhm.
And this is where we would try and create the larger size, allow for residential on larger size lots issue. But if you will, if you'll turn to page 2 of the draft ordinance,
Yep.
you'll see a blank in E, no more than 30. So this is how big can it be? How much impervious cover can it have? No more of 30%, no more than 30% of each parcel. I think everybody was okay with that when we last
Mhm.
spoke. Up to a maximum of blank square feet. I think, it was unclear amongst staff. I thought that was 600. Someone thought it was bigger than that. What did you want? Say there's a big one. What is it? Do they get they have a maximum sized gazebo that they're allowed to have?
I thought it was 600 feet.
Yeah, I thought we had talked about 600
It
feet.
was either 5 or 6, yeah. it was some-
That's it? That's what the trigger is?
Doesn't matter. You can't vote. It's okay.
You guys just think by yourself.
I'm pretty sure it was 600.
It was
600? Everybody good with 600?
600?
Sure.
600, maximum 600.
Okay. And then you'll see the second blank that will be the date that the actual ordinance becomes effective.
Right.
And that things that were built prior to then can remain until they're damaged by 50% or more.
And where does it say in here, I think we talked about we didn't want sheds.
It's the 50, I think the 50% opacity is probably what's going to address that. And that, if you look at the top of page 2, paragraph C,
Mhm.
it says you have to have 50% opacity. I guess you could have a shed with glass, or half of it glass.
You have to be able to see through it, and they don't make those, I don't think, so.
So
Okay.
we-
There's also a definition.
It's a lot easier, just say, no sheds, by the way.
That's what he's talking about, right?
Just put in parentheses,
That's
no
just what he
sheds.
said, see.
Sorry.
All right,
and we can say no sheds.
No, you don't need to. If it has a 50%
Yeah.
glass, it's not gonna,
Yeah.
I mean,
Go past it.
C covers it.
We'll be able to
pretty
see
well.
through it anyhow.
Yeah.
Because then if you have the 50% glass, it's no longer a shed, right?
Right.
Right.
Then it's a
Then it's a
gazebo.
structure. Yeah,
or a
it's a gazebo.
something or other.
Yeah.
I guess that'll work.
Okay.
Oh,
Anything else, sir?
No, sir, I assume this again is where we would create that larger.
So this
lot.
one also, we can approve the first reading, but we're not gonna schedule the second one yet.
Yes, sir.
good
Okay.
idea.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead, Leonard.
Okay.
You need to read it?
I do.
You do need to read it, yeah.
We didn't meet the last one.
You're right.
Can we go back and rewind and?
You can have a motion to reconsider your last vote.
So moved.
Nope, that's my fault.
So,
So moved.
That's what you get for staying too late on a Friday afternoon.
You read it by title and I can put it in.
Come, let's
Nope, let's do it this
We're
way.
on
Then we got a
recording. Let's
motion
do
and
it
second to
right.
reconsider.
Yes.
By
okay.
acclamation, they all
Okay,
said
wait,
yes.
where are you at? Are you on 10G? Did you go back and?
Yeah,
Go
We
back,
are-
go back.
we are
Yes, ma'am,
going back.
10G.
Yeah.
Ordinance number 1468 is entitled an ordinance repealing section 26-151 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring, providing for conflict and providing for an effective date.
now I make a motion, we approve the first reading of ordinance 1468.
second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments from the public? Any further whoop, yes, ma'am, come on up.
So my biggest reason why I want a structure is for storage. If I have half glass, everybody is going to see my items inside of my clear glass structure. So I live right next to Veterans Beach, and I actually brought up the safety issue. I know I live right next to there. I love it. However, we're bringing a lot more water sports into town. We just had the jet ski race. Hundreds of people. And I'm gonna have my clear glass gazebo with all of my items for my family in plain sight.
Let me explain to you.
So I just want to be a little, just kind of share what I'm hearing.
Okay,
as
think vertical. This half you can't see through, this half you can. So you can put your items in this half of it, you can't see through that half, but this half you can, that's 50%.
But I can't have a visible, attractive shed that I'm going to see because it's for everybody else's eyes to see, right?
I think they're saying you can
It's
provide
just
storage that's lower, like under the
Well,
under
I'm
the
just
level of a
saying
wall.
I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to build this beautiful structure. I'm not gonna put something ugly on my property. First time I spoke, we spoke about sheds.
Right.
We spoke about something appeasing, something nice to look at, and I don't remember who it was who brought it up, bringing up some, like, I can't remember what it was, but what you wanted to see on this structure. It was never no sheds. That was never brought up, no sheds. So,
It would definitely was brought up,
It
it's on
was-
the, it's on the record.
Yeah.
oh, I might have
Yeah.
not have been here. I
Yeah,
might
you
have not have
probably
been
weren't,
here.
you were here for the first discussion.
Correct.
We've had subsequent discussions, this is
Okay.
actually our third round.
Great.
And the second one was very, very specific.
Well, I
Sheds
wish
are
I
out.
was here.
We don't want
Well,
Shedsville on Lakeview Drive.
Okay.
The concern was
Okay.
you might put a very nice looking shed on, but
Right.
somebody else might put a very
That's why
unattractive
we
one
should
on.
have standards and not just say that I'm going to build a $25,000 building to store my items. I don't know how much things cost, but I do know it is costly to have something like that. That's just
What
my
do you want in the
thoughts.
store?
I'm sorry?
What do you
Water
want in the
items.
store?
So I have 2 children. Just for example, over the weekend, it was Labor Day, you know? So we actually had some children that didn't know how to swim, had to go back over to the house. We got 3 life jackets. 2 of the children could not swim. We have a boat. We're going out on the boat. Let me go get the other life jacket. I already have some at the house. However, we have all different sized children.
Yeah.
It's not just life jackets. It's sunscreen. It's goggles. It's a noodle. It's a towel. It's just things that you use at the lake. It's not easy for me to go back over to the lake when I have my
But we were talking about
kids.
something built kind of halfway up with benches that fold up and you can put your life jackets
Yep.
and your noodles and all that stuff.
we already have some of those, you know, storage items. So I
You
don't know.
could, you could even put inside on each of the walls, let's say on either side, stand up, like the plastic storage compartments that they have. They're about $120 each, and you can lock them, and then those could be inside, and as long as.
Correct, but I still have to build my structure.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to build
Little
a
at a
structure
time.
anyways, and it's gonna have to be permitted.
Well, I was gonna permit
Yeah.
what I was gonna put there
Yeah.
anyways.
But this
Yes,
thing,
sir.
this thing, C says, no structure shall be constructed on any of the properties except docks, dock-related structures, boathouses, gazebos, pergolas, and cabanas, which can include bathrooms and outdoor or summer kitchens, but no air conditioning or heating, and none of it should have more than 50% opacity when viewed from Lakeview Drive. So whatever you do, half of it is gonna be closed off, however you determine to do that. And half of it should be plenty to put everything you're talking about.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Come on up.
I was just wondering.
Come on up to the microphone if you would, please, and tell us who you are.
Jeff Stanley. I heard her what she was doing, and I'm just wondering. Pretty simple, you know, 50% has to be glass, and the other 50% can be closed in and stuff. Now, I have draperies in my home.
Not glass, it just has to be able to see through it. It can
Yeah.
be screened, it can be open
It
air.
can be open.
Okay,
It can be
well,
like-
would I be allowed to have draperies?
This only applies to the area of the small parts of the lake, of the land that lie between Lakeview Drive
Sure,
and the
sure.
lake. It doesn't apply all the way around the lake or everywhere in the city.
Yeah, I just thought, you know, just those crank draperies that open and close. Seems like a pretty simple fix.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from council members?
Nope.
Okay.
Ordinance, agenda item
Did
10H.
we had to, you read that, and we have to take a vote on it?
I take a vote.
Correct?
You
Yeah,
have
we
to take
still
a vote now.
still
Did I-
hold.
This is 10G,
We're
still
still on 10G,
And
okay.
then take your vote.
So,
Moved by Carlisle, second by Stewart. We'd have to
Right.
right,
vote.
now, would you take a?
Call the roll.
That's what happened.
Clark,
He's just helping you out.
He
Take,
was helping me, thank you, Scott.
take the vote, Ms. Haley.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yeah. Now let's.
When the council meetings move into overtime, we need all the help we can get.
I'm getting a little grumpy. Probably
Ordinance-
we're not through with 10-8.
Not through it? Oh, I'm sorry. My wishful thinking, I guess.
We'll get there, Bob.
Agenda item 10H
Don't go
is
too far.
Ordinance 1469, and it's entitled an ordinance amending and restating Section 25-37 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing an effective date. We've discussed the changes that you would like to see, and you would be approving it today based on the changes that you've discussed here tonight.
Okay. Request a motion.
You want a motion? I make
Yes,
a
sir.
motion that we approve first reading of, huh? No, I got to get the ordinance.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Ordinance 1469.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public?
But thank you.
Any comments or questions from council? Mr. Mayor, any comments on your behalf?
No.
He's about to win.
Oh.
Okay, Kathy, would you call a vote, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to Mr. Bogus. Veterans Beach Water Tower wireless contracts.
Good evening.
Good evening.
At the budget workshop we had back on August the 17th, council expressed some interest in demolishing a couple of our tanks. This is because these plants were retrofitted with a variable frequency drive controller that essentially eliminates the need for the tank. The problem is, one of the tanks that we talked about demolishing, we do have contracts with wireless carriers, and they're rather long-term contracts. I asked Mr. Swain to take a look at these contracts to see if there was any way we could get out of them early. And essentially, if I understand Mr. Swain correctly, the two things have to happen. They have to be in default either by not paying their lease, or they have to be in default by not making repairs, damages they might have occurred when they were installing their equipment. To the best of my knowledge, neither are the case. So they're not in default. I guess we just never gave a thought that we would ever come to a time that we wouldn't need these tanks. So,
Right.
contract didn't include it. To try to make council feel a little bit better, we are making some revenue, and it's my understanding we're estimating the revenue for this past fiscal year to be over $91,000. So if you take that out 20 years, which is what T-Mobile has left on their contract, you're looking at over $1.7 million for that length of time. So we are making some money on that tank, and even though the money doesn't come to my department, it goes to general fund. So I guess you could say, in a way, the tank is paying for the repairs.
Don't you love these guys?
Oh, I love that.
I'm sorry, I had to throw that in.
No extra charge for that. huh?
There goes your raise.
Back on the July 20th meeting, I did come before council with a contract to paint the exterior of this Veterans Beach tank. That quote was $49,849. The council did approve that at that time, and then we got into budgets and some more discussions occurred. But I would like to ask council to allow us to go ahead and execute that contract. It looks like we have to keep the tank anyway.
Right.
So let's go ahead and get it painted as quickly as we can. I do have some attachments there just for council's information.
Okay, very good. Any comments from council? Any comments from the public? I'd like to request a motion.
I make a motion we authorize the council president to sign and execute the contract with Southern Corrosion, Inc. to recoat the exterior of the Veterans Beach elevated water tank.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further comments from council? Any further comments from the public? I think this is a moneymaker. I think it's a great thing for that tower. The other tower is a
We
different
don't want
matter.
to paint that other one that hideous red ball.
It keeps popping up. All right, Kathy, would you call for the vote, please?
Sir. Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your patience. Okay, let's see, business from the audience. I do have a agenda request from Ms. Carmelo Garcia, circle usage for a 9/11 ceremony. If you would come up, sir. I apologize, I thought.
No apologies necessary. Except when I come back to the next meeting, you're gonna have to get me psychological help for all the nightmares I'm gonna have about trailers and you really do have to know your real estate to be a council member here, don't you?
You literally picked the longest meeting we've had all year.
And it's for the shortest thing actually, because
Yeah.
all I need is just your permission. I was trying to get in contact with the gentleman, but he was out. Again, my luck. And then I had to come to this meeting. I'm gonna be dreaming. I'll do a lot of running in my dreams tonight. That's for real, and I can't run.
Call ahead. Call ahead next time, and we'll let you know.
Yeah, there you go.
Carmelo Garcia, 102 South Ridgewood Drive. I'm actually his tenant. The roof is horrible. No, I'm just kidding. I just need permission to use the circle on Saturday between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. to do a prayer ceremony on the remembrance of the September 11th. We already have commitment from Sebring Fire and from Highlands County Fire Rescue. I'm still waiting for commitment from PD and from the Sheriff's Department. It's a really quick thing, it's 2 hours. I'm not expecting 100 people. I just put it out there and it is what it is, but we're just gonna go there and pray. We need a lot of prayer. And me being a minister and my mom being a pastor, the best thing that we can do to support to the community is do that. And then on top of that, remember, I was in New York. I used to work across the street, Pace University Bookstore, when those buildings came down. So every year I do something, and every 5 increments I do something. And this time it happens to be that I live here. So I want to give back to the community in that, and I just need your permission to see if I can use that property.
Sounds great.
Yep, it does. Do we need anything special, Scott?
I don't think so. Not the numbers we're talking about, you think we need?
No, sir.
What's the date again?
Okay.
Saturday, September 11th.
The 11th.
Yep.
Okay.
From what time to what time?
From 6 to 8. We try to trick me.
From 6 to 8.
I just make sure I heard you right.
I've been
Okay,
sitting here
I
way
think you
too
have,
long for you
Yeah.
to play that.
The police commander sitting in the back of the room there, have you had a conversation with him yet?
I emailed the police chief today.
He's out of pocket right now, but if you talk to Commander Hart, I'm sure he can facilitate your needs.
Awesome. And I know that the gentleman was asking me about some stuff. The fire chief was asking me about some things that he needed.
Sure.
I don't know what it is. Could you again let me know what it was that you needed?
You're not looking for any road closures, right?
No.
You're just gonna do.
But they're gonna, the fire, ambulance, and police department are gonna go around the circle with their sirens on for 2 minutes. But that's all the road closures we're gonna need. And it's not something that we can close the streets for anyway.
Right.
You hear a siren, you stop. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
for 2 minutes, in the memorial remembrance, that's the meeting. That's all we need.
Yeah, okay.
Why don't we do this and, how about if I make a motion that we grant his request with the full approval of both the police and fire chiefs? Sounds like a nice thing.
I'll
I'm
second
good. Can you
that.
repeat that again?
I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I will be.
I'll be there too.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Any comments from council members?
I did.
Yep. So we have a motion and a second. Kathy, would you call the vote, please?
Bishop.
Yes.
Carr.
Yes.
Detmer.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Valens.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
God
you
bless.
very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. City attorney business.
Ordinance 1465 is entitled an ordinance amending subsection 26-171, parent 4 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring by requiring a boundary survey as a condition to obtaining a wall permit, property owner's responsibility for locating property corner markers for proper location of fences, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Beautiful.
this is on your agenda for second and final.
Yep. Request a motion.
Make a motion that we approve 1465 on second and final reading as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Any further comments from council? Kathy, call the vote, please.
Bishop.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Denton.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lance.
Yes. Okay, city administrator business.
Explain this.
Oh,
Would you like me to have some?
no.
Please.
But I had to
All mine
ask.
was back in consent. How's that?
2 out of 3.
Yes, very good move. Okay, city clerk's business and announcements.
Appointments.
Council needs to
Yeah.
approve the payment of bills.
So moved.
Second.
Yep.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Comments from council? Kathy, call the vote.
Bishop.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes, ma'am.
Denton.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lance.
Yes.
Okay, my next thing is appointment to the CRA board. Now, I will tell you, just so it's clear.
Background. Do the background.
Are you
Like
gonna let
read the
them come
background
up
or
and-
read the back for the public, please?
Well, I was just gonna say I was gonna go ahead, yeah.
No, you can read the background.
Nope.
Oh, okay, I'll read the background.
That's your job.
And this is, okay, I apologize if I said that. Okay, Mrs. Tracy McCoy currently serves on the CRA board and her term is expiring September 30th, 2021. The vacancy was announced at council's August 17th, 2021 meeting and posted on the city's webpage. 2 applications have been received. 1 application received from Mrs. Tracy McCoy and a second application was received from Mrs. Terry Mendel. Attached to their applications. I know council has reviewed those. And the appointment will be for a full 4-year term, October 1, 2021 to September 30th, 2025. Okay,
Next.
next. Request motion to select one of the 2 candidates to the CRA board.
So, if you pass, if you vote yes, that's the only vote you get. You don't get one yes vote.
I understand that.
Okay, I just wanna make sure everybody understands what's, how to vote.
Okay, in alphabetical
So if
order.
you vote yes, so the first one, you don't get another yes. Okay. Okay, so alphabetical order, Ms. Tracy McCoy, Bishop,
Yes.
Detman,
Pass.
Carlisle,
Pass.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay. So Ms. McCoy getting the majority of votes.
Okay. 14C, appointment to the HPC board. With the resignation of Mrs. Jane Zern, there's a vacancy on the HPC board, that's Historical Preservation Board. The vacancy was announced at council's August 17th, 2021 meeting and posted on the city's webpage. Mr. Dan Andrews has submitted an application for this vacancy. Mr. Andrews' application is attached. The term would be to fill the unexpired term of Ms. Zern from September 7th, 2021 to December 31, 2022. To be a member of this board, you must reside or be engaged in business, which means owning a business, practicing a profession, or performing a service for compensation, or serving as an officer or director of a corporation or other business entity so engaged within the city of Sebring. Requested motion to appoint Mr. Dan Andrews to the HPC board as presented.
I make a motion we appoint Mr. Andrews to the HPC board as presented.
I'll second that.
It's getting late.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Comments from council? Kathy?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Benton.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Okay, that is the end of our meeting
What do we
tonight.
do with all this?
Well done, sir.
I don't have to worry about it.
All right, these were a lot shorter before